Did the second young lady escape today? In a single night, my esteemed elder sister underwent a remarkable transformation. Once rather taciturn, she suddenly became vivacious and exuberant. Not only does she incessantly clamor to pursue the narrative, but she even attempts to ensnare the limping crown prince in her schemes. Furthermore, the cousin who came to propose was publicly humiliated as she forcefully shoved him to the ground. My elder sister boldly declared that she was destined to become the crown princess and would never deign to associate with such lowly merchants. Yet, as I gazed upon the cousin, who wore a look of utter dismay on the ground, a chill coursed through my veins. My elder sister is likely unaware that what she is observing is but a counterfeit. In this tale, the crown prince does not survive beyond the 10th chapter. As for the seemingly gentle and refined cousin before us, he is, in truth, the ruthless true protagonist, the regent, Yang Chen. 1. As an author, I had never anticipated that procrastination would bear its own consequences. On the day I finally completed my manuscript, I found myself immersed within the very narrative I had crafted, a refreshing historical romance novel. The story commenced in a rather cliched manner. The legitimate daughter of the Shin family was widely regarded as a fool in the capital. Fate intervened when the female antagonist attempted to drown her, resulting in the protagonist's South Soul taking her place, thus embarking on a whirlwind journey of fortune. The protagonist vanquished the nefarious rival and outsmarted the scheming concubine. Unhindered, she utilized her talents to establish a skincare boutique, rapidly gaining renown among the elite circles of the capital. However, when the nation fell into turmoil, she generously used her earnings to support the front lines, inadvertently crossing paths with the regent, leading to a tumultuous, yet romantic partnership. The narrative was indeed exhilarating, visually appealing, albeit somewhat predictable. The twist, however, lay in the fact that I had not assumed the role of the protagonist, but rather that of the malicious antagonist, the illegitimate second sister, Xunling Shuang. Moreover, I had arrived 5 years prior to the events unfolding. Xunling Shuang, having lost her concubine mother, suffered neglect from her father and indifference from her mother. Perpetually afflicted by illness, presented herself as a delicate flower, while everyone perceived her as a pitiable innocent, unbeknownst to them. She was the most malevolent character in the entire tale. The protagonist was initially betrothed to the wealthy young master Tan Yunju from Jinzhou, marking her first perfect romantic encounter. Yet, in a bid for her own future wealth and glamour, Xunling Shuang cunningly manipulated circumstances to claim him for herself, orchestrating a scandalous encounter that led to their consummation. In a desperate attempt to conceal the family's disgrace, the Shun patriarch annulled the protagonist's engagement overnight. Consequently, Xunling Shuang became the unwed lady of the Tan household. The readers were outraged, bombarding the comment section with vitriol, wishing for the antagonist's demise. Under the mounting pressure, Xunling Shuang's fate was equally grim. Later, as Tan Yunju returned to Jinzhou with his entourage, they were ambushed by bandits, resulting in Xunling Shuang being abducted, losing her purity and beauty in the process. Ultimately, through sheer willpower, she managed to escape back to Jinzhou, only to be mistaken for a beggar by the Tan family's servants, resulting in her tragic death on the streets. Reflecting on Xunling Shuang's fate, I realized that while I had once relished writing it, I now wept for her tragic end. At present, I dared not bully Xin Chunning. In fact, to avoid a dire fate, I refrained from stepping outside, except to pay my respects to the matriarch. However, without my presence, the original narrative still had a scheming concubine waiting for the protagonist. This concubine, named Lu Xiangyun, nearly became a legitimate wife after the protagonist's mother passed away. Additionally, there was a younger illegitimate sister, Xin Menger, who, being quite young, had not caused much trouble in the original story apart from following Xunling Shuang around to engage in mischief. Now I tread cautiously, not daring to provoke Xin Menger, even warning those who ventured near the lake of its dangers. For 5 years, I had remained hidden, while Xin Chunning continued her naive existence, and Xin Menger enjoyed the privileges of a legitimate daughter thanks to her concubine mother. I distanced myself from everyone, spending my days in solitude within my courtyard, reviving my old craft of writing novels, allowing a maid to discreetly sell them for profit. Fortunately, through my writing endeavors, I had amassed a considerable sum. I resolved to endure this existence, believing that as long as I did not push Xin Chunning into the lake after 5 years, I would survive, and Xin Chunning would remain unchanged. In this arrangement, all parties would emerge unscathed. Yet, if the plot remained unchanged, and she was indeed pushed into the lake, I could still maintain my integrity, aligning myself with the new protagonist and investing in her shop. As long as I clung to the right benefactor, I could thrive. Ultimately, regardless of the path taken, both were exceedingly favorable for me. Little did I know, fate had other plans, presenting an unforeseen third option. 2. Who could have foreseen that? A day after the ceremony marking her coming of age, I would find myself kneeling in the main hall of the Shin residence, adhering to the narrative. Father, you must take my side. I was merely walking along when my second sister pushed me. A drenched Shin Chunning, shedding tears like a weeping willow, had shed her former daft demeanor. I was taken aback. I did not know it wasn't me. Why was I being unjustly accused? The patriarch of the Shin family furrowed his brow. Second daughter, what is the meaning of this? I maintained my composure, observing with measured detachment. Eldest sister, perhaps in your moment of panic, you misinterpreted the situation. I clearly saw you push me, Shin Chunning exclaimed, scrambling to her feet and retrieving a purse embroidered with butterflies from her faded old jacket. This is the purse I took from her. The concubine, upon seeing the purse, gasped in astonishment. I have seen that purse before. To think you would harm your own sister. Old master. It is my failure in discipline that has led to such a disgraceful act in our household. Seize the second young lady and punish her. The concubine's voice rang harshly, while I leaned in to examine the purse, which depicted a beautiful scene of mandarin ducks frolicking among butterflies, a creation far beyond my capabilities. Before I could offer an explanation, a panting little maid burst into the room. She knelt beside Shin Chunning, about to whisper something, but I swiftly seized the purse and tossed it to her. Kai-dai, why did you leave your purse lying around? The maid named Kai-dai was momentarily stunned, accepting the purse with profuse thanks. As she nodded, the concubine's expression darkened. Shin Chunning, equally incredulous, turned to Kai-dai. Is this purse yours?
Kai-dai nodded,
clutching the purse. Yes, miss. You rushed out as soon as you awakened, and I hadn't had the chance to speak with you. Shin Chunning looked between me and Kai-dai, confusion etched on her face. No, this doesn't make sense. How did the narrative change? I distinctly remember taking Shen Lingshuang's purse. How did it become yours? Their murmurs reached my ears, and I listened intently. Shin Chunning claimed the plot had altered. Had she read it? But the protagonist I had written was merely a modern individual. There was no indication she had perused my work. I raised my gaze to Shin Chunning. Could it be that she was not the original protagonist? Witnessing the misunderstanding, the Shun patriarch waved his sleeve dismissively. Nonsense. Such accusations must be substantiated. You are to be wed soon. Do you wish for the Tan family to learn of your premarital lake incident? You shall have a difficult time of it. Only then did the matriarch slowly open her eyes, casting a glance at the concubine before declaring, seize this girl and prepare her for sale tomorrow. Shin Chunning, however, was not entirely oblivious. She swiftly grasped Kai-dai protectively. Grandmother. It was clearly Shen Lingshuang who pushed me. Why must Kai-dai be punished? My second sister must have secretly swapped the purses before entering the family. My lips twitched. It was remarkable how easily she could turn white to black, eager to propel the plot forward. The concubine, seated nearby, took her tea with an air of calm, suddenly adopting a softer tone. This matter does seem suspicious. Considering the old master's absence, all that was provided to Chunning has been of the utmost quality. It is possible that sisterly jealousy has arisen. Given the chill in the air, it is unlikely that Chunning would have thrown herself into the lake. Chunning, as sisters, let us not dwell too deeply on this. If you are truly aggrieved, I shall punish the second daughter by withholding her monthly allowance. Hearing this, I could no longer maintain my composure. You may strike me, but dare you threaten my source of income? I inhaled deeply, raising my head to face the concubine. Your fairness is commendable. In the absence of my father these past years, Lingshuang has hardly left the matriarch aside. What brings you to the concubine's quarters? Claiming that we have developed a rift? I tugged at Shin Chunning's worn-out coat, which had faded to a ghostly hue. If we are to speak of clothing and sustenance, behold the coat worn by my elder sister, which was left over from the year before by our third sister. Why would I be envious of a tattered coat? Surely, I must be losing my wits. Perhaps it was my long-standing meekness that had prevented me from raising my voice until now. The second concubine was momentarily rendered speechless, her gaze fixating on Shin Chunning's coat, which appeared increasingly familiar. Finally, she pointed at me in exasperation and declared, when elders speak, you ought not to interject. It seems your tongue has a mind of its own. The second concubine, not even the rightful wife yet, dared to put on airs before Lord Shin. I inwardly scoffed at her audacity, feigning a sense of grievance as I nestled beside the old matriarch. You are right, dear aunt. If it is your wish for Ling Shuang to acknowledge this, then she ought not to dispute it. However, yesterday, entrusted by grandmother, Ling Shuang went to the kitchen with Kai Huan to prepare the peach molds for the upcoming celebration, a fact that the kitchen maids can attest to. Then, I leaned against the old matriarch's knee and began to sob. However, the current situation seems to suggest that the second concubine is intent on finding a scapegoat. As a younger sister who seldom garners your favor, if I must be made to accept this, then so be it for Ling Shuang. Upon my reminder, the old matriarch squinted her eyes, raising her hand to stroke my head with a sigh. I had almost forgotten. It was indeed I who summoned the second girl to the kitchen yesterday. How could she possibly be at the lakeside pushing anyone? Furthermore, was it not said just a few days ago that new coats have been made? Why have the eldest and second daughters not worn them? It seems I have grown lax in managing the household, while you, dear aunt, have been quite formidable. Despite my cautious demeanor over the past 5 years, I had always been attentive to the old matriarch. Aware of her failing eyesight, I would frequently read scriptures to her or transcribe Buddhist texts, ensuring to knead her shoulders and offer her delicacies without fail. Though I had not gained much favor, I hoped that my efforts would be remembered should I ever find myself in need. Indeed, it had come to pass. The old matriarch had originally overseen the household after the demise of the female lead's mother, but following a serious illness, the second concubine had ingratiated herself, prompting Lord Shen to relinquish authority. It was clear that the old matriarch was not content with this arrangement. Her words had rendered the second concubine speechless. Lord Shen then scrutinized the garments worn by Xin Chunning and me, casting a glance at Shen Menger, who was adorned in a newly made coat. It was evident to him what had transpired. I lowered my voice, feigning tears as I spoke. The second concubine has claimed that both my sister and I are to be married, questioning the need for such expenditures. While my sister and I may endure some grievances, I implore you both, father and grandmother, to guard your health, especially with father needing to present his report tomorrow, should this matter become public. Shin Chunning stared at me in shock, clearly taken aback, while the second concubine grew increasingly agitated. Why are you two, usually so meek, suddenly so bold? Dressed in old coats and yet involved in lakeside antics, it seems you have been awaiting this moment. Lord Shin, who had been seething in silence, could contain his anger no longer and struck the second concubine, sending her sprawling to the ground. You, Lu Shangyun, have been entrusted with the household, and this is how you manage it? Do you even comprehend the background of the young man from the Tan family in Jinzhou? He has just proposed to Chunning, and yet you are unwilling to provide her with a decent coat. What are your intentions? How will the Tan family view the Shin family after this? A truly venomous woman you are. It seems the household should revert to the matriarch's control to avoid accusations of mistreatment of the legitimate daughter and entrapment of the illegitimate one. The second concubine, realizing the gravity of the situation, immediately rushed forward. My lord, I did not do anything. It was those two. Lord Shin glared at her, delivering another blow that sent her reeling. Speak louder. Let everyone witness our family's disgrace. I am a newly appointed third-ranked official, and before I even make my mark, I am being ridiculed. How could I have been so blind as to keep you in this household? Seeing Lord Shen about to reach for a stick, the second concubine was terrified, covering her face as she knelt and began to kowtow. I hurried to intervene. Father, there are outsiders next door. At this, Lord Shen reined in his fury, casting the stick down upon the second concubine. She nearly fainted, collapsing onto the ground in convulsions, while Shen Menger remained at a distance, not even offering assistance. It seemed both women were perplexed, as this had initially been a dispute between the legitimate and illegitimate daughters, yet it had escalated unexpectedly. However, this was no concern of mine. I kept my head bowed, feeling a sense of relief. It was fortunate that Lord Shen had restrained himself. I must not disrupt the narrative with unforeseen events. After all, while the circumstances had diverged from the original plot, the second concubine's loss of authority over the household remained unchanged. There were no significant alterations, and I had narrowly escaped a disaster. On the way back, I hurried to catch up with Shin Chunning, who was striding ahead. Elder sister, wait. I have something to discuss. Shin Chunning, having met with misfortune, regarded me with a wary expression. What is there for us to discuss? I bowed humbly. Elder sister, regarding your fall into the water yesterday, perhaps you truly did not see clearly or heard some rumors. But I assure you, I was in the kitchen yesterday and never approached the lakeside. Shin Chunning scrutinized my expression. You truly did not do it? That seems unlikely. I recall you were quite taken with the cousin. Upon hearing cousin, I realized she had indeed read my book. I quickly grasped her hand. Elder sister, the cousin's affections lie with you. He has proposed to you. And I have not left the house in 5 years, let alone seen him. So how could I have pushed you into the water? Moreover, you and the cousin are a match made in heaven. I continued to extol her virtues, unaware that Shin Chunning had flung my hand away in disgust.
Stop it.
I am to become the crown princess. Why would I marry a cousin with no accomplishments? After saying this, she appraised me with a sneer. Shunling Shuang. Spare me your pretense. I know you harbor feelings for the cousin. Since you like him, I shall relinquish him to you. Tomorrow, I will speak to father. After all, whether it is me or you who marries, it matters not to him. I was momentarily taken aback. She intends to marry the crown prince? Wait, did she truly read my book? Surely she didn't stumble upon the paid content and mistakenly believe it was a pirated version. I forced a smile. Elder sister, you jest. Everyone knows that the crown prince has injured his leg while hunting, and concerns about the royal lineage may arise. It is unlikely he will. Before I could finish, a sharp slap resounded against my face, igniting a fiery sting. I looked up in shock. Shin Chunning had struck me. She gazed down at me from her elevated position, her eyes glinting with derision. How dare you, Shinling Shuang, speak so recklessly about royal matters? The current crown prince is handsome and destined to be a wise ruler. You, merely a supporting character destined to perish by the 10th chapter, dare to lecture me? Her words nearly made me laugh in disbelief. No way, did she really read a pirated version? However, in order to fully immerse myself in the role, I still covered my face, feigning tears. What is it? Does the eldest sister seem to possess foreknowledge of future events? Shun Chunning scoffed, crossing her arms. In any case, you won't survive for long. It matters not if I tell you. The imperial decree for your betrothal will arrive shortly, rendering your engagement to that cousin of yours completely void. I advise you to keep a low profile these days, as long as you refrain from self-sabotage. I might allow you to linger for a few more chapters. With that, Shun Chunning swept away, leaving me stunned in place. After a considerable time, I bowed my head, unable to suppress a smile that crept onto my lips. How delightful. Instead of the clever heroine I anticipated, I was met with a foolish imitation. The prince in my narrative, having been left lame, was notoriously capricious and violent. Although he later married a princess, it was a forced union. The princess, wearied by the prince's brutality, lived in perpetual sorrow, and ultimately, 6 months later, the prince met an untimely demise, compelling her to follow him into the grave. In those days, the entire capital band entertainment, and the first tea house I intended to open was thwarted. I would awaken from dreams cursing the prince's ancestors. And now this Shin Chunning dares to proclaim her intent to marry the prince? Truly splendid. I let out a cold laugh and rose from the ground. Just as I lifted my gaze, I caught sight of a flash of white fabric around the corner. I quickly composed myself, covering my face and pretending to sob as I hurried back to my courtyard. My maid, Saihuan, upon seeing my swollen face, cried out in distress. It is one thing for the second aunt to treat you harshly, but how could the master allow you to suffer such indignity upon his return? I was still preoccupied with thoughts of Shin Chunning and the prince, waving my hand dismissively. It's a trifling matter, no need to dwell on it. By the way, Saihuan, go fetch the money I've earned from my writing over the years. Let us count it together. Seeing my calm demeanor, which was hardly indicative of someone wronged, she obediently nodded and went to retrieve the money box. This was a tradition we had established. Every evening, once the sun set, we would light a lamp and settle at the table to count our coins. Miss, why do you insist on counting daily? With the silver notes you've saved over the years, you could surely afford several chests for your dowry. I spat a few words as I counted the money. Dowry? Saihuan, wait until I reclaim your contract from grandmother. We'll elope in 2 months. Saihuan paused in her counting, her eyes widening in disbelief. Miss, have you lost your mind? I chuckled softly. I'm not mad, but Shin Chunning is truly deranged.
How can that be?
I saw the legitimate young lady speak so smoothly about throwing herself into a lake. I shook my head. She's worse off than before. If we don't escape soon, our entire family may end up accompanying the prince to the grave. Miss, how can you say such things? Surely you've been reading too many novels? I smiled but offered no explanation. Saihuan had no inkling that Shun Zijiang's successful return to the capital was entirely due to the favor of the newly appointed prince. Had he not aligned himself with the prince, who was still the second prince at the time, he would likely still be toiling away in the southern provinces as a mere fifth-rank official. Now that the second prince had been named heir apparent, he had risen dramatically in status, garnering the attention of former colleagues. However, the elderly Shen Zijiang was, at his core, a selfish old man. Despite appearing astute today, he harbored only intentions of selling his daughters for personal gain. That cousin of mine, Tan Yunju, was merely the first step he paved for himself. The Tan family was the wealthiest in Jinzhou, holding numerous royal contracts, and with Jinzhou being a stone's throw from the capital, the Tan family was also a distant relative of Shen Chuning's mother. If the two were to wed, it would strengthen ties and undoubtedly lead to business opportunities in the capital. In time, Shen Zijiang would cultivate connections to serve the prince. What could be more advantageous? Unfortunately, this fortunate turn of events fell into the hands of Shen Lingshuang. Regardless, all the daughters of the Shen family were destined for marriage, so it hardly affected him. Moreover, now that he had risen to the third rank, and with Shen Chuning being the legitimate eldest daughter, there were still opportunities for upward mobility, making the prospect of a marriage arrangement quite feasible. However, as the story unfolds, although Shen Chuning attracted countless suitors, she remained uninterested in romance, opting instead to open a business. Yet now, not only was she intent on marrying the prince, but she seemed willing to accompany him to the grave. While her demise was inconsequential, the original Shen Zijiang would likely keep a low profile, avoiding any repercussions. But now, with Shen Chuning insisting on marrying the prince, the Shen family would inevitably face the fallout upon his eventual death. At that point, exile would await us, leaving me in a dire predicament. I must escape soon. I finished plotting the narrative, having counted the silver notes clearly. 430 taels, far from the 1,000 taels I needed. I closed the lid and tucked the key into my bosom. Saihuan, remember this. When you see Shen Chuning, turn and flee without uttering a word. And keep your distance from that colorful butterfly. Saihuan looked puzzled. Why, miss? I undid my hair and turned towards my bed. Is it not obvious? It is to avoid misfortune. I had initially thought that if Shen Chuning remained the same heroine, I would use my accumulated savings to befriend her and invest in her skincare shop. Once that business deal was secured, I would be well set for life, regardless of the outcome. But who could have anticipated that after waiting 5 years, I would end up with such a situation? At this juncture, I could not let my money sit idle. I would have to forge my own path. However, my funds paled in comparison to the initial capital the heroine once had, so I resumed my relentless writing. A few evenings later, while the household was busy serving dinner to the main hall and various courtyards, I instructed Saihuan to slip out of the Shen residence through the back door with my newly penned manuscript to sell, while also purchasing some ink. Fortunately, my writing skills had not diminished over the years, and by adapting popular modern themes to the current society, my work sold like hotcakes. The servants relished rebirth, dominating the world. Scholars favored re-entering the officialdom, rising step by step. Young ladies enjoyed rebirth, the head of the household, while merchants were captivated by starting from scratch, wealthy beyond compare. Having grasped the market, my books flew off the shelves. Even the bookstore owner would provide me with advance payments, delivering the excess sales to me monthly. To maximize profits, I even turned my gaze towards the vegetable-selling matrons, penning another spring at the village head. My quill moved with fervor, and once the paper was filled, I turned to fetch more. Yet, in an inattentive moment, crash! The inkstone fell to the ground, shattering into countless pieces. Staring at the fragmented inkstone, I was momentarily stunned. Nowadays, a single inkstone is not inexpensive. Remembering that the storeroom should still have some, I hurriedly slipped out of the courtyard while there was still daylight. In the original story, Shen Chuning's first funds came from secretly retrieving her mother's dowry from the storeroom. Now that she was busy encountering the prince outside the residence, she had no time for such antics. Drawing on my knowledge from the original narrative, I stealthily approached the broken window in the storeroom. Seeing that the window was indeed damaged brought me joy, and I swiftly climbed through. Gazing at the mountains of gold, silver, and jewels piled in countless boxes within the storeroom, I hesitated, struggling to restrain my hands. A mere inkstone is manageable, but should anything else be lost, it would likely incite a thorough search of the household. During the time of the second aunt, oversight was lax, but now, under the watchful gaze of the matriarch, one must tread carefully. I inhaled deeply and plunged into the storeroom, commencing my search. After much rummaging, I finally unearthed a rather exquisite inkstone. I carefully wrapped it in a cloth and swiftly made my way out through the window. Fearing an encounter with anyone, I dashed back, but as fate would have it, I collided headlong with a man just as I exited the small archway. With a resounding crack, the precious inkstone slipped from my grasp and shattered upon the ground. Staring at the remnants of my inkstone, my eyes widened in disbelief. Oh, my inkstone! Such a fine piece would surely fetch 100 taels of silver at the very least. A gentle voice broke through my dismay. I beg your pardon, Mississippi. Are you injured? With my inkstone in ruins, did I appear unscathed? My temper flared as I lifted my gaze to confront the man before me, clad in white garments, exuding an aura of elegance and tranquility. My anger faltered, replaced by astonishment. Since when did the Shun residence house such a figure? The man glanced at the shattered inkstone, his expression tinged with regret. Pray tell, how much does this inkstone cost? I shall compensate you. A sense of foreboding washed over me. Before he could finish speaking, I turned on my heel and fled. Hey, where are you going? His voice called after me, but I quickened my pace, propelled by a surge of panic. I had thought I would never encounter this cousin, yet here I was, embroiled in a mishap over a stolen inkstone. This was the inner courtyard. If anyone saw me, Shin Chunying would surely revel in the opportunity to make a spectacle of it. Her mind was now wholly occupied with the prospect of becoming consort. Eager for any chance to secure her position, I refused to fall into that trap. Upon returning to the courtyard, I clutched my chest, panting. I rarely exercised, and running had left me drenched in sweat. I reached for my handkerchief, only to find my pockets empty. I stood frozen in place, realizing I had run too swiftly, leaving behind the cloth that wrapped the inkstone. If that cousin were to find it, how could I possibly explain myself? Suppressing my rising anxiety, I resolved to retrace my steps and retrieve the handkerchief while time was still on my side. Perhaps I could communicate with him properly. He might even understand. However, upon reaching the archway, I was astonished to see that the remnants of the shattered inkstone had vanished completely. The area was so immaculate that it seemed as though the inkstone had never shattered at all. Could it be that this benevolent cousin had cleared the debris to avoid obstructing others' passage? How considerate of him! I hurriedly scoured the nearby thicket, bending low to search for the inkstone. After a lengthy search yielded no results, I overheard voices coming from behind a rockery. Curiosity piqued. I tilted my head slightly to glimpse the shadows, revealing a corner of white. Undoubtedly, that same cousin. A surge of elation welled up within me. Just as I prepared to step forward, a flash of silver caught my eye. In the next instant, a dull thud echoed as a servant collapsed to the ground from the shadows. The servant bore a deep, gaping wound around his neck, blood oozing profusely. I was instantly gripped by a chilling fear. It seemed, had stumbled into a narrative akin to a Mary Sue business drama. Raising my gaze once more, I observed the cousin, who had previously appeared so gentle and refined, now methodically wiping the blood from a soft sword. The warmth had evaporated from his countenance, replaced by an icy demeanor. As he meticulously cleaned the blade, a realization dawned upon me. I recalled that only the male protagonist in the original tale wielded such a soft sword. Yet, the original protagonist was the fabled ninth prince Yang Chun, a figure so esteemed that even the current crown prince had to address him as ninth uncle. How had he been reduced to a mere cousin? A gasp escaped my lips as I realized the gravity of the situation. In the original narrative, this character met his demise on the road due to a chronic ailment shortly after a few brief mentions. The perspective had always remained with the female lead, never elucidating the cousin's identity. Could it be that he had been replaced early on? I swallowed hard and peered once more at the rockery. In the original tale, Yang Chun had been persistently seeking evidence against the second prince. Once he amassed enough proof to topple the second prince, he would support the young fifth prince's ascension to the throne. At that point, he would no longer be the obscure ninth prince, but a rightful regent. Previously, my thoughts had been solely on the female lead, with little interest in her romantic counterpart. I had envisioned a future where I profited from her success, living comfortably while already eyeing my new residence. Who could have imagined that a mere collision would lead me to uncover the male protagonist masquerading as another? At this moment, Yang Chun was likely utilizing the guise of the Tan family cousin to investigate the clandestine dealings between Shin Zijiang and the crown prince. The narrative, which had not been penned, now seemed to seamlessly weave into this unfolding tale. Had I known that seeking the inkstone would lead to such complications, I would have refrained from venturing out. As I pondered whether to feign unconsciousness or make a hasty escape, a voice emerged from behind the rockery. Is such a trifling matter truly worthy of my personal involvement? My apologies. I never anticipated that the Crown Prince would have agents within the Shun household and that they would be aware of our movements, a subordinate replied. What of Shun Chunnying? Has she exhibited any unusual behavior? She has been absent from home, seemingly lingering each day at a location frequented by the Crown Prince. The Shun father and daughter are indeed of one mind. Even knowing the true character of Zhou Laonian, they still rush headlong into danger. I listened intently, but my legs grew numb from squatting. I shifted, inadvertently crunching a withered leaf beneath me. Who goes there? I sprang to my feet, ready to flee. But my numb legs betrayed me, and I stumbled back into the thicket. After what felt like an eternity, the man's voice resonated coldly. Search. Yes. I lay hidden for an indeterminate time, until the sounds of footsteps faded away. Slowly, I emerged from the underbrush. Night had fallen completely, and it seemed the men had not noticed me. I swiftly returned to the courtyard, where Caihuan was already waiting. Upon my arrival, she eagerly produced a silver note from her bosom. Miss, I bring good news. The master has declared that he will no longer peruse new manuscripts. Instead, he will pay a deposit. As long as you provide him with the first draft, he will print and sell it directly. I took the silver note and began counting. This is splendid news. Our future income will be stable. Miss, how did your inkstone come to be shattered? Her inquiry caused my hand to pause mid-count. I accidentally broke it. Tomorrow morning, please purchase a new one. Thanks to Shinzijiang, the early Yang Chun harbored no favorable impressions of the Shin family. Even the female lead had to perform numerous good deeds to alter his perception. If he were to discover that I had eavesdropped on their conversation, my fate as a mere supporting character was uncertain at best. Thus, I resolved to remain indoors for the next few days, avoiding any chance of encountering him. To my surprise, on the following morning, I found a new maid standing at the gate of my courtyard, holding a gilded Nanma box. What is this? An item you lost, returned to its rightful owner. The maid kept her head bowed, and after delivering her message, she respectfully handed the box to Caihuan and hurried away. My heart raced as I opened the box, revealing an exquisite inkstone nestled within, causing me to momentarily choke on my breath. Caihuan gasped in astonishment, exclaiming, Miss, this is a premium Zeton pine-patterned inkstone. The Uwala sells it for 50 gold pieces. I was acutely aware of its value. As I reached for the inkstone, I noticed that beneath it lay a piece of paper. Furrowing my brow, I withdrew it to find a few ominous words inscribed. If you wish to live, remain silent. A shiver ran down my spine, nearly causing me to drop the inkstone. Miss, is something amiss? I steadied myself and returned the inkstone to the box. Go to Yuhua Hall and return it. Procure another one for 50 taels instead. The following morning, Caihuan set off to exchange the inkstone, returning just before noon. Upon her return, I noticed her arms laden with numerous packages, prompting me to pause my writing. I merely asked you to purchase an inkstone. Why the extravagant spending? Caihuan, panting from exertion, placed the items on the table and then retrieved the golden Nanma box from her bundle. I was taken aback. What's this? Did they refuse to refund you because you're a young girl? Caihuan waved her hand dismissively. Do not mention it, miss. The moment the shopkeeper saw this golden Nanma box, his face turned white with fear. Not only did he refuse to accept a return, but he also gifted me 2 additional 50-tael inkstones along with all of this. Miss, you have no idea. The owner even sent a carriage to bring me back. I barely managed to shoo him away and slipped back through the back door with old Yu's vegetable cart to avoid detection. I stared in astonishment at the table overflowing with ink, paper, and the inkstone. The paper was exquisite Chengxintang paper, smooth and white as jade, thin and glossy, leaving no creases when folded. A single foot of this paper was worth a fortune, and yet an entire roll had been delivered. The ink was the finest pine sit ink, gleaming like lacquer, rumored to start at 100 taels in the market. And I had received an entire box of it? As for the complete set of Xian brushes, surely these items combined were worth more than the inkstone itself? Caihuan propped her chin thoughtfully. Miss, do you think the shopkeeper recognized me as a valued customer, hence the generous gifts? Perhaps this is a stroke of luck? There are many wealthy individuals in the capital. A 50 gold inkstone would hardly warrant such favoritism. I opened the golden Nanma box and examined the Zeton pine-patterned inkstone closely, only to discover a small engraving in the corner on the underside. It bore the character Zhou, signifying the 9th rank. This was undoubtedly the mark of the current prince of the 9th rank, Yang Chun. I slumped into my chair, utterly dumbfounded. This was no mere stroke of luck. The shopkeeper had clearly recognized me. However, he remained oblivious to my connection with Yang Chun. I could only dread that soon enough, News of the inkstone sale would reach Yang Chen's ears. Just the thought of it was suffocating. At that moment, I heard the voice of the maid Lingyu from the old lady's quarters. Is the second miss here? Saihuan and I exchanged glances before stepping out. What brings you here? Sister Lingyu? Lingyu entered the courtyard, beaming with joy. Second miss, tomorrow is the old lady's birthday. The cousin sent word that a troupe of performers has been arranged. The old lady mentioned that you often enjoy the place, so she would like you to have a look and choose a program. I had indeed spent considerable time entertaining the old lady with tales, as she adored the theater. Thus, it was only natural that she would think of me first upon the troupe's arrival. I forced a smile. You mean the cousin sent for them? Lingyu replied, indeed. The theater troupe is eagerly awaiting the second Mississippi. I stepped back, realizing that this was not part of the original narrative. Saihuan, noticing my pallor, asked, Miss, what troubles you? What troubles me? If Yang Chun discovered my intention to sell the inkstone he gifted me, he would surely think I had disregarded his warning. And after this performance, he would seize the opportunity to punish me. Lingyu chuckled. The second miss has not ventured out much in recent years. It's only natural to feel shy with so many guests around. I hesitated in my retreat. A crowd could offer safety. I lifted my head, saying, since grandmother remembers us, let us go and take a look. Following Lingyu to the front courtyard, I was greeted by the sight of a troupe busily preparing their stage in the Qingzhou courtyard, an area typically reserved for entertaining guests, elegantly surrounded by lush bamboo. As I entered through a side door with Lingyu, I scanned the area for the old lady, but did not see her. Just as I was about to inquire, a familiar voice emerged from behind the bamboo grove. Sister Chunning, has my cousin offended you in some way? Cousin? Our families are separated by a vast distance. Tan Yunju. I advise you to withdraw your proposal before the imperial edict arrives, or you will only embarrass yourself. An edict? But Sister Chunning, I have already sent a matchmaker to discuss our compatibility, and I have come all the way from Jinzhou to make my intentions clear. Nonsense. You think yourself worthy? As I rounded the bamboo grove with Lingyu and Saihuan, I was startled to see Shin Chunning shoving someone to the ground. Lowering my gaze, I recognized the frail figure at my feet. It was none other than Yang Chun. The man trembled slightly as he spoke, though I am unworthy. My family is the wealthiest in Jinzhou, and countless matchmakers have sought my hand. Yet here I am, disregarding their counsel to pursue a marriage with the Shin family. Pray tell, what have I done to warrant your discontent, Sister Chunning? At that moment, Shin Chunning seemed unfazed by the gravity of the situation, lifting her chin defiantly.
Ha!
How dare you speak, a mere lowly merchant, unfit even to serve the crown prince. The mention of crown prince sent a deeper tremor through the man at my feet. Saihuan tugged at my sleeve. Miss, what shall we do? The cousin is nearly in tears. It was not tears, but rather rage that glimmered in his eyes. I had no intention of getting involved. I would rather flee. Just as I was about to withdraw, the man grasped my ankle tightly. Slowly, he raised his head, his eyes red and misty. I apologize for causing the second miss any amusement. Who wishes to witness your plight? Release me so I may escape. Seeing that he was unwilling to let go, I signaled to Saihuan, hurry, and help the cousin up. At my words, Saihuan rushed forward. But before she could touch his white sleeve, the man swiftly released his grip and stood up on his own. Upon seeing me, Shun Chunning smirked condescendingly. How fortuitous that you arrived, second sister. Your beloved cousin is here. Why not express your thoughts plainly, so I may be rid of this troublesome attachment? I was taken aback. What nonsense was she spouting? Her words, however, drew the man's gaze toward me. Under the scrutiny of his inquisitive and bewildered eyes, I steeled myself and replied, Sister is jesting. Grandmother sent Lingyu to fetch me to select a script for the performance. I did not anticipate encountering my elder sister and cousin conversing. Please continue. I shall not intrude. Just as I finished speaking, Lingyu unexpectedly chimed in. Since both young ladies happen to be present, why not select a play together? The old lady has only requested one performance, and there are still 2 remaining. However, Shin Chunning shot a glance at the sky. What play? I am quite busy. You supporting characters can amuse yourselves. Kaidai, prepare the carriage. Judging by the sun, we should still catch the crown prince at Tiandi Tower for some music. As Shin Chunning prepared to leave, I immediately grabbed Saihuan and turned, but had scarcely taken 2 steps when I was called back. Second sister, please wait. I shuddered but dared not turn around. Is there something you need, cousin? The man behind me paused for a moment, then spoke softly. Aren't you here to select a play? By coincidence, this troupe is one I brought from Jinzhou. Why don't I take you to meet the troop leader? You may not know, but he has quite a few hidden gems among his scripts. Liang Yu. What about the old lady? I was about to call for Liang Yu to help me out, but to my surprise, she took a few steps back, directly retreating behind Yang Chen. Then I saw Yang Chen lift his gaze toward me, his smile gentle. Second sister, please. I felt myself being gently urged forward. While Saihuan looked at me, her expression filled with suspicion. Miss, why do you seem so uneasy? I don't. Miss, you can't possibly have feelings for cousin.
Can you?
Be quiet. The group arrived at the supplies room in the back courtyard, and as soon as I stepped inside, the door was shut behind me.
Saihuan.
I turned to push the door, only to find it locked from the outside. Behind me, the man's calm voice drifted over. Second sister, please have a seat. The original narrative depicted Yang Chen as profoundly calculating. Even the former heroine had engaged in a battle of wits with him countless times. How could I, a powerless and unimportant branch of the family, contend with him? I turned to look at the man, who was gazing down, inhaling the fragrance of tea. The white steam rose, momentarily obscuring his elongated eyes. Second sister, it seems you are rather frightened of me? I leaned against the door, forcing a laugh.
How could that be?
Indeed, you must be quite brave, for no one has ever dared to refuse the gifts I bestow.
Cousin, you flatter me.
It is merely that Ling Shuang, having not seen much of the world, happened upon a rare treasure and naturally wished to inquire about it at the shop. The man paused, his fingers lingering over the tea froth.
Oh, and what did you manage to find out?
I trembled slightly. I suspect that this inkstone of yours is quite precious. My maid didn't even have the chance to inquire before the shopkeeper generously provided plenty of ink and brushes in return. As for the origin of this inkstone, I fear I may never uncover it. A smile crept onto the man's lips as he slowly set his teacup back on the table. Since you are such a perceptive young lady, I shall not dance around the subject. Today, Channing mentioned that you hold affections for me. Is that true? I was taken aback and hurriedly raised my hand in a gesture of oath. Heaven bears witness, my elder sister and cousin are meant for each other. How could Ling Shuang ever covet her future husband? Seeing my denial, the man continued with a smile. Master Shen is currently flourishing, and the Tan family wishes to strengthen their ties. Upon seeing that Channing was unwilling today, I thought to inquire about your sentiments. My face turned pale with fright. What nonsense was he speaking? In the original tale, Shen Ling Shuang had seized Shin Channing's betrothal, leading her down a path of ruin. The thought of the frigid winter months when Shin Ling Shuang had been brutally beaten to death in the streets of Jianzhou sent a shiver through me. If he continued to press, I would surely meet a similar fate before the next chapter unfolded. Ling Shuang is merely a daughter of a concubine. Perhaps cousin should invest more effort with my elder sister. As I spoke, I called out, Liang Yu.
Saihuan.
Why hasn't the troop leader arrived yet? Fortunately, this place was not too secluded. If I shouted loudly enough, not only Liang Yu and Saihuan but even the guards at the entrance would hear me.
Yet.
After calling for what felt like an eternity, there was not a whisper in response. Before long, the man's voice came from behind me. Dear sister, save your breath. This troop consists of over 30 people, and they have secured the courtyard. No matter how loudly you call, I fear no one will respond. I froze mid-action, raising 3 fingers again. If it concerns the inkstone, I swear that on that day, Shen Ling Shuang would never breathe a word of it. Should I break my oath? May heaven strike me down without mercy. Hearing my curse, he merely chuckled. What good is an oath? What need have we for the magistrate? In my presence, the only ones who can remain silent are the dead. No sooner had he spoken than I was abruptly lifted off my feet. I gasped, instinctively pushing against him. But it was futile. When I looked up, I met his warm, mirthful gaze. The man held me firmly, guiding my hand down to touch the cold object wrapped around his waist. Remembering the servant behind the rockery, I instinctively shivered. Once that sword was drawn, I feared my throat would be slit on the spot. In a flash of desperation, I cried out, Wait!
Wait!
There are others who can remain silent besides the dead. The man narrowed his eyes. Then pray tell, who might that be? I looked at him. Those of our own. Yang Chen's fingers slowly rubbed against my hand, his gaze holding a tantalizing depth. Are you not unwilling to marry me? What, then, do you mean by this? I feigned calmness. If cousin seeks merely to prolong his time by proposing, Ling Shuang would naturally comply. However, my ambitions do not lie in marriage. I hope cousin can grant me a path to freedom after fulfilling his desires. What future is there after being jilted by one's fiancé? Ling Shuang knows her lowly status. In any case, I would be married off as a concubine. It would be wiser to leave this place early and seek a way to survive. Cousin has connections. Surely it would not be too difficult to grant Ling Shuang her freedom. The man lowered his head, sizing me up. After a lengthy pause, he smiled. To dare to negotiate terms with me shows a measure of courage. The most frightening thing is to possess no leverage and to seek nothing. Knowing what I desired, he would naturally lower his guard. As his grip around my waist loosened, a knock echoed from outside the supplies room. I have brought the play scripts for the young master and young lady. Enter. Turning, I saw that Yang Chun had already resumed his seat at the table, sipping tea. Appearing as composed and gentle as ever, as if everything that had just transpired were merely a figment of my imagination. The door swung open effortlessly, and a man clad in coarse linen approached, holding the scripts. I glanced at the plays before me, bewildered, and looked to Yang Chun. He rested his chin on his hand, his expression warm and inviting. Whatever play you wish to select, I shall defer to your judgment. Time was running out for me. Yang Chun, aside from his kindness towards the heroine, was ruthless with all others. Moreover, I was aware of his true identity. Those empty promises meant nothing. Once this was over, would it not be simpler for him to take me outside the city and eliminate me? I had initially thought that I would have more time, but it seemed that before my marriage, this was my last opportunity. The following day marked my grandmother's birthday, and I adorned myself with great care. Before noon, under the pretext of making purchases, I ventured to the most opulent establishment in the capital, the Tiandi building. This place is indeed remarkable. The singers within possess enchanting voices, and the dancers exhibit tantalizing figures, with even a simple cup of tea costing 5 taels of silver. Dressed in a delicate apricot yellow gauze gown, my every gesture drew numerous gazes from the surrounding patrons. After a considerable time, Kai Huan finally rushed upstairs, clutching a box. Miss, the money has been deposited in the bank as you instructed. Here is the receipt. Did you inspect the shop? I inquired.
I did.
There's only this small establishment in the south of the city. The business appears decent, so I instructed a beggar on the street to keep watch. Once they close, he will report back to us. However, miss, they have been making pastries for many years. Will they really shut down? I gazed out at the falling snow, exhaling a cloud of mist. They will. The original text speaks of turmoil in the northern borders during the year-end, affecting many. The shopkeeper's family hails from the north, and with their household suffering, they will undoubtedly sell the shop at a low price to return home in search of their loved ones. The female protagonist of the original story seized this opportunity to acquire the shop at a bargain. Now, with Shin Chunning no longer a viable option, my only path to survival lies in following the same route she once took, which may grant me a chance to escape this dire situation. Kai Huan looked at me, concern etched on her face. Miss, it's quite cold by the window, and you're dressed so lightly today, you might catch a chill. I shook my head, adjusting my hairpin. Is it beautiful?
Kai Huan nodded.
It is lovely, though perhaps a bit chilly. Pleased, I nodded in acknowledgement. Kai Huan glanced around and whispered, Miss, shall we dine here? I noticed the sign below. A bowl of noodles costs 10 taels, and we only have 5. I did not respond, instead rubbing the teacup while observing a carriage slowly approaching below. Once it came to a halt, I rose. Let us go, for my grandmother's birthday. The only thing worth having is the silver thread longevity cake from this Tiandi building. We shall buy a portion to please her. But that longevity cake costs 30 taels. How can we afford it? As I saw the carriage stop at the entrance, I led Kai Huan downstairs. Rest assured, someone will cover the cost. Just as we reached the bottom of the stairs, we collided with a throng of individuals making their grand entrance into the Tiandi building. At the forefront was a man clad in a brocade robe, exuding an imposing presence. However, he limped as he walked, holding the hand of a woman beside him, none other than the infamous Prince Zhou Sheng. The two were nestled together with undue familiarity, even in public, a sight rather unbecoming. Kai Huan, glancing at the woman beside him, exclaimed, Is that the legitimate young lady? A cold smile crept across my lips. In other narratives, this limping prince might pass as a hidden male lead. Alas, at present, he was merely a debauched and ineffectual figure. He possessed some intelligence, albeit not enough. Or else he would not fall prey to Yang Chen's machinations in the future. I chose to ignore them, gracefully approaching the waiter to request a takeaway of the silver thread longevity cake. Miss, a single portion costs 30 taels, and an additional tael for the takeaway box. The waiter informed me. Kai Huan gasped. What a ripoff. Feigning to reach for my silver, I was interrupted by a sharp voice beside me. Shenling Shuang? What brings you here? Is this Tiandi building a place you can frequent? Upon hearing this, I lowered my hand and donned a smile, gracefully greeting Shin Chunying. Dear elder sister, how could you say such a thing? In business, one does not discriminate against customers. The prince halted momentarily, his gaze fixated on me, clearly intrigued. Dressed in my delicate apricot yellow gown amidst a sea of heavily bundled women, I appeared rather fragile. Shin Chunying, fully aware of my intentions, noticed the prince's interest in me and chuckled. Zhou Gongzi, please forgive my sister. She hardly ventures out, and I merely mentioned your impending arrival yesterday. So she has come to wait here. Yet I wonder if our second sister is not cold dressed like that. The prince, though a fool, was no imbecile. He scrutinized me, amusement glinting in his eyes. I felt my cheeks flush, casting a fleeting glance at him before bowing my head. Sister misunderstood. My cloak was soaked by the snow and is drying in the carriage. I intended to buy something here and return home soon. My voice trembled with feigned distress. Yet the prince appraised me with a roguish leer. In this frigid weather, as your own sister, why not accompany us inside to listen to some music? I quickly bowed my head. Thank you for your kindness, but today marks my grandmother's birthday, and I am here to purchase the longevity cake. Today is the old lady of the Shin family's birthday? The prince's demeanor shifted to seriousness. Chunying, why did you not inform me? I have not prepared a gift. Shin Chunying frowned. Such a trivial matter should not. How can it be trivial? The prince interjected, raising his hand to command. Li Rong, accompany the second young lady to purchase a warm cloak. In this cold, we cannot have her catching a chill. Additionally, I shall cover all her expenses before she returns home. I lifted my gaze to meet his, a hint of softness in my expression, though I hesitated. Is that truly appropriate? The original Shunling Shuang, possessing a naturally delicate demeanor, required no pretense to appear endearing. The prince, clearly intrigued, stepped closer to grasp my hand, but I retreated a step, seeking refuge beside Shin Chunying. The prince, missing his mark, instead took Shin Chunying's hand and patted it. Chunying, your father and I have shared a deep friendship since his tenure in the southern provinces. With the old lady's birthday, such courtesies are only fitting. Later, I shall send someone with a congratulatory gift. How does that sound? Shin Chunying, momentarily taken aback by his grasp, smiled. Zhou Gongzi's regard for the Shin family is truly a blessing. Second sister, since Zhou Gongzi has spoken, you should not decline. Quickly go and buy a cloak, so we can return home. I quickly inclined my head. Yes, elder sister. As the two departed, Li Rong bowed to me. Second young lady, allow me to cover the cost of the silver thread longevity cake. I watched the two ascend the stairs, then turned to Li Rong, offering a faint smile. That would be most gracious. Having procured the longevity cake, I made my way to the nearest clothing shop and purchased a snow-white cloak, spending 80 taels, paid for by Li Rong. With a cloak to ward off the chill, I stepped into the Jean Feng building, a boutique specializing in gold and silver jewelry. Kai Huan tugged at my sleeve, whispering, "This is the largest gold shop in the entire capital. Even the cheapest pair of gold earrings costs over 100 taels." I was well aware of this as I entered Jean Feng building and surveyed my surroundings before beckoning the shopkeeper. For the old lady's birthday, I require something presentable. The shopkeeper beamed at my request, promptly presenting several sets of gold headpieces. My fingers glided over the exquisite boxes, settling on the heaviest set. How much for this one? The shopkeeper replied with a smile. Miss, your discerning eye is commendable. This is a new arrival at our Jean Feng building. The entire set is priced at 800 taels. 800 taels. Kai Huan's eyes widened in disbelief. I nodded. Wrap it up. Upon concluding this, I proceeded to select 5 bangles, 3 gold hairpins, and 2 pairs of gold earrings. The proprietor bustled about behind me, almost venerating me like a deity. Kai Huan's eyes widened to the point of nearly popping out of her head. When the final tally came to a staggering 1,530 taels, I instructed, Kai Huan, settle the bill. With a blink, Kai Huan feigned reaching into her empty purse. To my astonishment, I noticed that Li Rong had already produced a thick stack of banknotes, totaling a full 1,600 taels. My expression morphed into one of disbelief. This cannot be. Young Master Zhou has already been too generous, I protested. However, Li Rong chuckled in response. Miss, you are being overly modest. Such a sum is trifling to young Master Zhou. He would surely chastise me were he to learn that we settled for so little. Miss, I noticed that the jade and stones at the shop across, Dui Chui Lu, seem quite exquisite as well. Might you consider visiting there? Kai Huan's eyes widened once more at this suggestion. I covered my mouth and then smiled. If that is the case, then let us indeed go and take a look. Subsequently, I ventured to Dui Chui Lu and purchased several exquisite old green bangles, each costing several hundred taels. Next, I visited Fei Hua Go and acquired 5 bolts of the latest fabric designs, and as I passed by Xinghua Xian, I requested a set of the newly released rouge and eyebrow powder. By the time we approached you, He Tang, Kai Huan had already tugged at my sleeve, shaking her head fervently. Miss, isn't this a bit excessive? I laughed, reflecting on the prince's lavish and indulgent lifestyle. A mere fan in his hand could be valued at a king's ransom, rendering this expenditure insignificant. Just as I was about to request several bundles of Qing Xian Tang paper and a few ink blocks to settle the bill, the proprietor of Yu He Tang descended the stairs with a lavishly dressed gentleman. As I caught a glimpse of that man's face, a chill ran down my spine, and I quickly turned to have Li Rong shield me. Observing my reaction, Li Rong assumed I was having second thoughts about purchasing and hurriedly urged, "Miss, is this enough? Perhaps you should select a few more items? I noticed a fine inkstone up there. I can have someone fetch it for you." I hastily retracted my head into my cloak and forced a laugh. This is more than sufficient, truly. You needn't worry about the expense, as young Master Zhou has stated. Li Rong began, but before he could finish, a familiar voice called from behind, "Second younger sister?" Li Rong turned in surprise to see who it was. And without his cover, I sheepishly raised my head to face the stern-looking man behind me, awkwardly waving, "Cousin Xiao, what a coincidence." Yang Chen narrowed his eyes, glancing at Li Rong before returning his gaze to me. "How is it that just a few days have passed, and you have exhausted your ink and paper already?" Yang Chen rarely ventured out, and even now, despite being a trusted confidant of the prince, he did not recognize Li Rong. Li Rong paused momentarily, and I quickly interjected, "This gentleman is my distant relative, young Master Tan from the Tan family." Upon realizing he was a cousin, Li Rong promptly offered a respectful bow before discreetly moving to settle the bill. The proprietor, recognizing Kai Huan, glanced at Yang Chen's expression and then slapped his thigh, hastening to catch up with Li Rong. "This bill is waived. Yet, Yang Chen squinted. "If you keep waiving bills, proprietor, perhaps you ought to close Yu He Tang." The proprietor was momentarily taken aback. Li Rong, unaware of the underlying tension, nodded. "Indeed, you should charge as usual." He then retrieved a handful of banknotes from his pocket. Yang Chen shot him a glance before turning his attention back to me, a gentle smile gracing his features. "Has my second sister found herself a benefactor?" I quickly shook my head. "Cousin Xiao, you jest. This gentleman is merely a servant of my father's friend in court. Hearing that my grandmother is celebrating her birthday, he came to procure some items." Yang Chen's eyes narrowed further. "For the old matriarch's birthday, you require ink and paper?" I gritted my teeth. "Indeed. I intend to compose a longevity painting for my grandmother." "Very well. Since time is of the essence, let me escort you home," Yang Chen offered. Just as I was about to decline, I noticed a darkening expression on his face as his fingers fidgeted at his waist. A shiver ran through me, and I hastily nodded. Thank you. Li Rong assisted me in loading my purchases onto the carriage, and then turned to hand me a jade token. "Miss, you may use this jade token to visit young Master Zhou at the manor in the future." Under the icy gaze behind me, I wiped the cold sweat from my brow and accepted it with a forced smile. After bidding farewell to Li Rong, I was ushered into Yang Chen's carriage. Yang Chen raised an eyebrow as he surveyed the pile of items within the carriage, casually opening a brocade box to reveal an array of gold-headed adornments and those precious bangles. "Second sister, are you truly in such dire need of silver?" I quickly produced the jade token that Li Rong had just given me, presenting it to him with utmost reverence. As he gazed at the token emblazoned with the emperor's surname, Yang Chen narrowed his eyes. "What is the meaning of this?" "Ling Shuang thought that perhaps cousin Xiao might find it of some use," I replied. Yang Chen scrutinized me for a considerable time before finally tucking the jade token into his sleeve. I did not anticipate that second sister was motivated by this. "You flatter me, cousin Xiao," I said, lowering my head in a demure manner, awaiting my fate. Silence hung heavy in the air until a light laugh broke it. The cool breeze swept into the carriage, and as I looked up, I found Yang Chen had lifted the curtain and stepped out of the carriage. "Since you have made the effort to venture out, second sister, let us take the opportunity to explore a bit more." I rushed forward only to see Yang Chen boarding an even more luxurious carriage across the way. Kai Huan leaned in, whispering, "Miss, is cousin Xiao envious of the prince?" I shook my head. "He is merely granting me a means of escape." "Come, let us turn back." "What?" Return for what purpose?
Cai Huan inquit.
I exhaled and smiled. Naturally, to return all these items and exchange them for cash. That evening at the birthday banquet for old Madame Shen, the prince indeed sent an exquisitely crafted white jade statue of a bodhisattva as a gift. Among the assembly of nobility and officials, the sight of such a splendid offering from the prince elicited knowing glances exchanged amongst them. It appears the Shen family is poised for a significant rise. Indeed, it was only a few years ago that old Master Shen was merely a fifth-rank prefect, had he not allied himself with the right people. Where would he find such glory today? Such a pity that the Shen family has no sons, only 3 daughters. These whispered remarks scarcely reached the main table, where old Madame Shen beamed at the jade statue before her. Presently, Li Rong approached with an invitation. At the end of the month, His Highness the Prince will host a red plum banquet at the manor, inviting all the young nobles of the capital to enjoy the plum blossoms and compose poetry together. The invitations were meant to be distributed tomorrow, but in light of the old madam's birthday, I have brought them today. The entire household was well aware of Xin Chuning's daily outings, and upon the arrival of a special messenger with the invitation, Xin Chuning naturally lifted her chin with pride. After Li Rong finished speaking, old Madame Shen's expression grew slightly solemn as she instinctively glanced at the several young ladies at her secondary table, although she still smiled amiably. "Thank you for your consideration, Your Highness." Shun Zijian eyed Yang Chen's demeanor, noticing he was quietly drinking, his gaze downcast, lost in thought, his expression somewhat complex. I had no time to concern myself with the various ulterior motives of those at their table. Instead, I focused on devouring the braised pork and large hocks that I seldom had the opportunity to enjoy. As I ate, my heart simmered with discontent. What nonsense was this red plum banquet? To put it bluntly, it was merely a selection of brides. I had no intention of attending. As the banquet concluded, Yang Chan was indeed summoned by Shun Zijian to the study. Shun Chunqing was entirely preoccupied with the banquet at the end of the month, showing no regard for her father, her nose held high, dismissing everyone as she turned and returned to her courtyard. Only Shin Meng-er wore a hesitant expression, stepping forward to grasp my arm. "Second sister, if His Highness the Crown Prince truly has someone in his heart, why would he invite us both along?"
Could it be?
I looked at Shin Meng-er, her eyes sparkling with youthful dreams, and sighed. A mere 12-year-old, already contemplating marriage, seemed rather premature. I offered a faint smile. "Sister, you have yet to reach the age of coming of age. Do not worry yourself unduly." After bidding farewell to the gathering, I picked up the food box I had prepared earlier and swiftly returned to my room with Kai Huan, locking the door securely behind us. I placed the food box on the table as Kai Huan brought out a box of money. Squatting beside the table, Kai Huan nibbled on the braised pork and large pig's knuckle she had pilfered, while I began counting the coins. The items I had acquired from the Crown Prince earlier in the day, aside from the ink and paper from Yuhua Hall, had all been returned. The merchants, initially reluctant to refund, dared not protest once they saw us in the Crown Prince's company, and the returns were made with great alacrity.
Now,
The two of us gazed at a box overflowing with silver notes, our eyes gleaming with excitement. Kai Huan, her mouth glistening with grease, remarked, "Miss, could it be that you spent the entire day merely taking advantage of His Highness?" I spat out a retort and counted the money rapidly. What else? The Shun residence holds no wealth. I must seize the opportunity where it is plentiful. I see the legitimate miss has a close relationship with the Crown Prince. Won't you be discovered? You just said they are close. Should my elder sister truly possess the ability to secure a marriage decree from the Crown Prince,
I would be his sister-in-law.
what is this littlesome matter? Kai Huan paused. I fear the Crown Prince may harbor ill intentions. Today, miss, you dressed rather provocatively. What if? I waved my hand dismissively. Fear not. Should the sky fall, my elder sister will shield us. If worse comes to worst, we still have that cousin young master to rely on. Kai Huan nearly choked, hastily patting her chest, her eyes wide with alarm. Miss, I sense something amiss today. It seems the cousin young master is particularly attentive to you. Could it be? Do not indulge in fanciful thoughts. But miss, the cousin young master does seem to regard you differently. The Tan family in Jianzhou is exceedingly wealthy. If you intend to seize the opportunity, why not from him? I twitched my mouth. Do not even consider it. The Crown Prince's resources are ripe for the taking. The cousin young master, however, is not. Even a rabbit does not consume its own burrow's grass. Should anything go awry, the consequences would be convoluted. The Crown Prince's fate is fleeting. I will take what I can. As a mere supporting character, I should not entangle myself too deeply with the primary protagonists. Once involved, consequences arise. And with consequences comes involvement in the main storyline. Supporting characters in such tales seldom meet with good endings. Kai Huan, seemingly grasping my words, finally placed the used dishes into the food box, wiped her hands, and joined me in counting the silver notes. Ultimately, we counted 2 stacks piled together. And Kai Huan exhaled, stuffing them all into the money box. All counted, Mississippi together with the previous savings, we now possess 4,500 taels of silver.
Miss.
With such wealth, are you truly considering establishing your own household? This has never happened before. It cannot be that simple. In the original narrative, Shen Lingshuang was a villainess. Yet this girl is undeniably kind. When Shen Lingshuang married, it was she who took an arrow meant for Shen Lingshuang, dying on the way. I held Kai Huan's hand firmly. No path is easy. What matters most is one's own choice. Kai Huan, remember, if one wishes to live well, silver is the foundation. I do not promise you great success, but I can ensure you will have a shop of your own, where you can indulge in meat daily without having to worry about whose face to please. Kai Huan stared in disbelief. I can have a shop and eat meat every day? I nodded solemnly. Indeed, eat as much as you desire. Not just the famed flaky pastries of the capital until you are sick. In the future, no one will be able to bully you. I will have you serve me. Kai Huan paused for a long moment, tears welling in her eyes. Mississippi. I exhaled, holding her hand. So, you must be obedient, paying little heed to those in our household, especially the cousin young master and elder sister. Should either of them make any moves, you must remain vigilant, understood? Kai Huan's gaze hardened, and she nodded earnestly. I will heed Mrs. Words. To avoid the Crown Prince's banquet, on the eve of the event, I found myself sitting in a tub while Kai Huan poured cold water over me. Just as I was halfway through, I heard Ling Yu knocking at the door, delivering headwear sent by the old matriarch for tomorrow's use. I was puzzled. Hadn't everything been settled during the day? Why send it at such a late hour? Kai Huan stepped out to bring the items in, and upon opening the wooden box, we discovered a simple wooden hairpin carved with plum branches and a pair of exquisite white jade earrings. Beneath the hairpin lay a set of pale white, elegant garments accompanied by a white snow mink fur scarf. This scarf looked strikingly familiar. I had glimpsed it in a shop while purchasing a cloak a few days prior. The pristine snow mink fur was priced at 80 gold taels each. Could the old matriarch truly have sent this? Realization dawned upon me as I picked up the snow mink fur. Something was hidden beneath it. I pulled it out to find a note inscribed with, "Attend the banquet on time tomorrow." Indeed, it was the handiwork of someone with ulterior motives. Kai Huan, oblivious to the note, frowned at the simple garments and the snow mink collar. Why would the old matriarch wish for you to wear this? Standing in the snow. Who could distinguish you from it? This was no gift from the old matriarch. It was evidently sent by Yang Chen, intending for me to attend the banquet. Presumably, he sought to infiltrate the Crown Prince's residence under the guise of using me as a cover. Had I known he was so insistent on my attendance, I would have skipped the cold water altogether. I sneezed, prompting Kai Huan to remove the tub, and in a huff, I climbed back into bed to sleep. The Crown Prince's banquet involved a visit to the plum garden in the afternoon before the evening feast. The next afternoon, Shen Chunqing appeared at the door, clad in an eye-catching pink dress, while Shen Menger donned a lovely pale yellow gown. The three of them stood together, making me feel as if I were invisible in the snow. Shen Chunqing cast a glance at me and scoffed, dressed like a snowman. Do you not fear freezing His Highness's eyes? I took a deep breath, my cheeks flushed. Just as I was about to respond, Shen Chunqing and Shen Menger climbed into the carriage. I wonder what father is thinking, allowing you to accompany us in such a state. You should find your own carriage. Do not bring illness upon me and third sister. Without waiting for me, they ordered the driver to depart. Watching them leave, I turned helplessly to find Kai Huan to call for a carriage, only to see a low-key, yet luxurious carriage stop before me. The heavy brocade curtain lifted, revealing an outstretched hand. Time is of the essence, second sister. Allow me to escort you. Glaring at that hand, I cursed my misfortune but begrudgingly bit my lip and climbed aboard the carriage. Inside, the opulence was undeniable. The man held a warming stove, gazing at me with a gentle smile. Why is second sister's face so flushed? I shot him a glare. It's cold. He lifted his hand, placing the warming stove into my grasp. Warm your hands. We cannot have you freezing. I kicked the heater in annoyance and turned my head away, refusing to look at him. With a slight tilt, I leaned against the window, closing my eyes to rest. The moment I shut my eyes, a surge of heat ignited within me, making my breaths feel significantly heavier. By the time we arrived at the prince's residence, I was nearly delirious. "Miss, we have arrived," came the voice. As the curtain was lifted, a wave of cold air rushed in. Clutching the heater, I instinctively rose and attempted to exit the carriage. But my sudden movement caused me to become unsteady, nearly toppling over. Just in the nick of time, someone caught me by the waist and lifted me back into the carriage. Shaking my dizzy head, I looked up at the man above me. "Why are you doing this, cousin?" I asked. My forehead felt suddenly icy, and Yang Chen furrowed his brow. "What has caused such a sudden fever?" "It is of no concern. Cousin should focus on his own matters," I replied, pushing him aside as I exited the carriage. Though my legs felt weak, the brisk wind revived me somewhat. Kai Huan gazed at me with deep concern. "Miss, can you manage?" My tongue burned with heat, so I took a deep breath of the cold air and stepped toward the prince's residence. "I am fine. Let us proceed." The entrance to the prince's residence was strictly monitored, yet with my jade token, Yang Chen swaggered in behind me without anyone daring to stop us. The courtyard had long been cleared of snow, and amidst the vibrant young scions of noble families, I yearned to find a quiet corner to rest. I turned to Yang Chen and said, "Cousin, please feel free." Having spoken, I entered the main hall, taking a few steps before glancing back, only to find him already vanished from sight. A group of people were drinking and warming themselves in the plum garden, and I settled on a distant stone, closing my eyes to recuperate. Before long, a sudden cheer erupted, prompting me to open my eyes. I saw Shen Chunning at the center, surrounded by admirers. "What is happening?" I inquired softly. Kai Huan replied, "The eldest daughter of the Ningyuan Marquis has posed a question about the snow plum, and the legitimate daughter has composed a poem on the spot. Truly impressive. I never realized she possessed such literary talent." I scoffed quietly. Indeed, she did not. Ignoring her display, I continued to rest, but before I could drift off again, my name was called. It has long been said that the Shen family is a lineage of scholars, and Miss Shen is exceptionally gifted. I wonder how the second daughter will respond? Looking up, I saw a woman in a striking crimson dress standing beside the prince, her gaze fixed upon me. After her words, Shen Chunning frowned, and the crowd turned their attention to me on the stone. I intended to decline, but the prince laughed heartily, saying, "Qing Xian, you may not know, but the second daughter of the Shen family is quite the frequent patron of Yuhuteng. Even the owner treats her with a modicum of respect." At his words, numerous hostile glances turned towards me, and even Shen Chunning's expression soured. I sighed. Having caught the prince's eye recently, how could I possibly escape today? I quietly asked Kai Huan, "Who is the questioner?" "It is the legitimate daughter of the Ningyuan Marquis, Li Chengxian," she replied. My heart sank. Was she not the future princess in the original text? Meeting her gaze once more, I glanced at Shen Chunning. Today, the Shen family could not afford to lose face. Otherwise, Shen Chunning's chances of marrying into the prince's residence would be thwarted. If she did not succeed, the agreement between Yang Chen and me would be rendered void. And how could I escape then? Taking a deep breath, I forced a smile and stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Miss Li, please present your question." Seeing me genuinely ready to engage, Shen Chunning's brows knitted tightly. Li Chengxian smiled slightly, saying, "Your sister has composed a poem about the snow plum. You may continue from where she left off." What a cunning maneuver. With Shen Chunning basking in applause, I was now expected to follow suit. The poem could not surpass Shen Chunning's work, yet it could not be inferior either. A multitude of eager eyes were fixated on me, anticipating my embarrassment. My eyes felt as if they were burning, and my head was throbbing. I raised a hand to cover my face, using the chill to cool my flushed skin and regain some clarity. After much contemplation, I began. "The plums outshine the snow, yet refuse to yield. Poets toil in vain to pen their verses. The plums must concede 3 parts of white to the snow, yet the snow yields 1 part of fragrance to the plums." Li Chengxian nodded. "Indeed, this is what your elder sister composed. Please continue, second daughter." It truly was that poem. I exhaled a puff of white mist, sighing inwardly, and reluctantly continued. "With plums but no snow, the spirit wanes. With snow but no verses, one becomes mundane." A spark of interest ignited among the crowd, and the prince was the first to applaud. And then,
Li Shanxuan Prumta.
I gazed skyward at the sporadic falling snowflakes, extending my hand to catch them. As dusk falls, the poem takes shape amidst the snow, creating a perfect spring alongside the plums. Once I finished, Shin Chunning stood frozen, and the crowd fell silent. After a long moment, Shin Chunning took an almost imperceptible step back, disbelief etched on her face.
How do you know this poem?
The prince dismissed her with a wave, calling out praises thrice. With his cheer, the crowd followed suit. How could it not be good? It was not even my own writing. Whispers circulated among the onlookers. The Shin family truly deserves their reputation as a scholarly lineage. These sisters are remarkable. Indeed, I initially thought the legitimate daughter was more talented. Yet this illegitimate daughter is not to be underestimated. Shin Chunning's gaze toward me grew increasingly frigid, while Li Qingxian regarded me thoughtfully. My forehead burned intensely, and I could no longer endure it. I leaned toward the prince. Your Highness, forgive me. Perhaps the cold air has affected me, and I am unwell. I would not want to dampen everyone's spirits. Seeing my condition, the prince limped over to examine me, noting my unsteady frame and frowning. Someone fetch some ginger soup from the kitchen. You lot, do not leave my residence in such poor health. At his command, the crowd stifled their laughter. Kai Huan was reluctantly escorted away to the kitchen. With her absence, I sensed impending trouble. We were in the prince's residence, and why was he dismissing the servants? Sure enough, the moment Kai Huan left, the prince moved closer to me. This poor girl, what'll happen if you freeze? Someone, quickly take Miss Shin to the side hall to warm up. The side hall. I instinctively clutched Shin Chunning's sleeve, hiding behind her. Elder sister. Shin Chunning shot me a glance before letting out a cold snort. At least you are perceptive. She shielded me with her presence and bowed to the prince. Your Highness, please forgive us. My younger sister has always been frail, and standing outside for too long will not do. If we do not allow her to return home to rest, she may end up bedridden, even during the new year. Kai Dai, hurry and take the second daughter back to the residence, lest she brings misfortune upon your Highness. I nodded vigorously from behind her. Elder sister speaks wisely. Ling Shuang is indeed unwell and would not wish to spoil your Highness's enjoyment. I beg for your Highness's pardon. With my words spoken in such a manner before the crowd, the prince could not refute further and, begrudgingly, waved his hand to dismiss us. Shin Chunning cast a swift glance at Kai Dai, who, upon noticing, hurriedly stepped forward to assist me as we turned to leave. The two of us made our way to a secluded area of the garden, but my legs felt unsteady, and I could hardly walk. I leaned against a nearby rockery and raised my hand to gesture. You should return. The main gate is not far from here. I can wait for the carriage by myself. When you see Kai Huan, tell her to come to the gate to find me. Kai Dai glanced at the distant gate and then back at me. But Mississippi. Older sister must not be left alone. This is the prince's residence. Just now, the crown prince dismissed all the servants. If she is ensnared because of this, our trip would be in vain. You must hurry back. Kai Dai's heart raced in alarm as she quickly bowed her head in thanks, then turned and dashed back. I stared dizzily at the distant gate, and as I attempted to continue walking, my legs buckled, and I was about to fall to the ground. To my surprise, the anticipated pain did not come. When I opened my eyes, I found myself cradled in someone's arms. Yang Chun appeared out of nowhere, squinting at me with a playful smile. It seems I owe quite a debt of gratitude to my second sister. Before I could break free, he effortlessly lifted me off the ground. I hastily grasped his collar. No, there are too many eyes here. You should attend to your own matters. Yet, Yang Chen paid no heed and boldly carried me through the garden toward the exit. Oh, does my second sister know what I am busy with? Dizzy and disoriented, I instinctively shook my head. No, I know nothing at all. In my haze, I heard a light chuckle above me, and soon I completely succumbed to unconsciousness. When I next opened my eyes, I found myself in a swaying carriage. A carriage? How did he manage to bring me out? Surely, there should have been palace guards at the gate. I attempted to move, but I was ensconced in his embrace. Unable to stir even a fraction. A warm sensation radiated from his chest against my back, causing me to tense up as I glanced back at the man who was resting with his eyes closed. Do not be concerned. Everyone has been sent away along the way, and no one saw me carry you out. Kai Huan. That girl has already been sent back to the Shin family by my men. I mustered the strength to rise from his embrace, but he pressed me back down. At dusk, poetry turns to snow, blooming alongside the plum blossoms as spring arrives. Yet spring has clearly not yet come. Does my second sister think it premature to compose such a poem? My breathing was labored, and with great effort, I managed to open my eyes, meeting the sharply defined jawline of the man. He lowered his head, his dark eyes resembling a deep abyss. My second sister is indeed righteous, even with a fever. You wish to lead me into the crown prince's residence. This makes me feel rather embarrassed. I weakly close my eyes. All the prince needs to remember is to grant Ling Shuang her freedom. A husky voice brushed against my ear. Freedom? Is that how you wish to leave?
Yes.
What if I do not wish for that? I do not care. In a daze, I felt a cool breath invade the warmth that surrounded me. The surreal dreamscape turned bizarre, yet that single chill felt oddly comforting. I plummeted into an abyss and lost consciousness entirely. After 3 days of high fever, the physician arrived, shaking his head. It was not until the 4th day at midnight that I finally regained consciousness and saw Kai Huan beside my pillow, her face alight with joy. Miss, you have finally awakened. I rubbed my heavy head and looked around, relieved to confirm that I was in my own room. Miss, are you feeling unwell anywhere? Shall I call for the doctor? I shook my head. No, just a rather absurd dream. It seemed I was carried back by someone insufferable. Kai Huan immediately shot me a knowing glance, and I looked at her in confusion, only to hear a cough from behind her. When I raised my eyes, I found Yangchen seated at the table, sipping tea. I was taken aback and hastily pulled the window curtain aside. How did he get here? Kai Huan pressed her lips together. He comes every midnight. It's been 3 days, and I didn't dare to speak of it. As soon as she finished speaking, the man set down his teacup. It is good that my second sister has awakened. I will be leaving in a few days. You must take care of your fragile health. Leaving? Of course, the new year was approaching. I quickly said, may the young master have a safe journey. Just as I finished speaking, he halted, looking at me through the curtain. Tomorrow, Master Shin will discuss the wedding date with you in detail. Take care of yourself, for I shall come to wed you in September of next year. After he spoke, he turned and left, leaving me stunned in place. A wedding date. September. Before I could fully process my surprise, the next morning, the 60 wedding gifts from the crown prince arrived ahead of schedule, although the imperial edict did not accompany them. Nonetheless, this made their intentions clear, and the entire household was filled with jubilance, especially Shin Chunying, who was particularly smug. As soon as the crown prince's gifts arrived, I was summoned to the study by Shin Zijiang. The conversation revolved around Shin Chunying being intercepted by the crown prince, and the Shin family needing to take responsibility toward the Tan family. Shin Menger was still too young, leaving me as the suitable option. And since Tan Yunju had intentions toward me, he planned to find a matchmaker to arrange the marriage. I did not object, merely stating that I had never roamed the capital and feared I would not have the chance. Shun Zijiang waved his hand, directly handing me a jade token for the Shin family's travels, allowing me to go wherever I wished as long as I brought someone along. With this settled, the announcement of my engagement to the Tan family was made the following day to the entire household. Thus, upon returning from my grandmother's place early one morning, I noticed the complex expressions in the gazes directed toward me. I was indifferent to how the Shin family viewed me. My priority was to devise a means to escape the main storyline as soon as possible. After receiving Shun Zijiang's jade token, my movements within the Shun residence became remarkably free. According to the original text, this young master had acquired the marriage certificate, which indicated he planned to return the following autumn to marry me. As for Shin Chunying and the crown prince's wedding date, I contemplated it for quite some time. In the original text, the previous crown princess was married in the middle of the following year, so it seemed to align. After all, overthrowing the crown prince was an affair that would take place after the new year. I simply needed to establish my assets throughout this year, and when September arrived, Yangchen would come in disguise to claim me. By then, with Shun Lingshuang dead, no one would be able to find me. With money in hand, I began to wander around the capital with Kai Huan, searching for suitable shops. As I sought inexpensive establishments, I also instructed my intermediary to keep an eye out for properties in Kazhou in the south. In the original text, Kazhou was depicted as a place of stunning natural beauty and exceptional talent, where even the protagonists had a villa. The female lead had even remarked that Kazhou was the most suitable place for retirement. However, unlike the female lead, I did not have abundant opportunities, nor could I easily find a devoted and skilled bodyguard to assist me in these endeavors away from home. Fortunately, properties there were generally affordable, and after selecting one based on the location map, I directly paid a deposit through my intermediary, intending to finalize the purchase upon my arrival. As the new year began, news of impending conflict at the borders spread through the tea houses of the capital. Shun Zijiang and the crown prince immediately became busy, to the point that even Shun Chunying could not find the crown prince. Shin Zijiang left early and returned late, making him scarce. Yang Chun had departed early, saying he had returned to Jinzhou and there had been no further news, presumably returning to his residence to continue his plotting. With their busyness, I found myself at an advantageous position. I procured the shop I had previously favored at a bargain price, ensuring that neither my assistant nor the business was interrupted. With the shopkeeper departed, I allowed my assistant to continue the operations, hiring merely a manager and an accountant to oversee affairs, while I merely sat back and collected the profits. With my first shop secured, the opportunities for further low-priced acquisitions began to multiply. In contrast to the original female protagonist, who possessed only 1,000 taels, I had 4,500. Seizing the moment as the crown prince still lived, I decided to venture into the skincare business, naming my establishment Jade Fat Spring. While the original protagonist enjoyed a plethora of romantic prospects and a flourishing business, my situation as a mere supporting character, devoid of suitors and connections, made it exceedingly difficult to establish a reputation. After some contemplation, I recalled Shen Chunning. In recent months, I had discerned that her narrative was likely a romantic palace intrigue, which diverged significantly from my business endeavors. Given that her life in the crown prince's residence would soon become arduous, I thought it prudent to utilize her talents for my own benefit. I dispatched someone disguised as a merchant from the Tan family to deliver some new products to the women of the Shin family. Naturally, Shen Chunning was the first to seize the opportunity. Upon seeing these modern skincare products, she paused, asking, "You mean these are all sent by the Tan family?" I nodded affirmatively. Eldest sister, often mingling with the daughters of noble families, you must have encountered such items before. Meanwhile, Ling Shuang, aware of her limited knowledge, does not understand these. Perhaps you might assist your younger sister in examining them. As Shen Chunning examined the moisturizer, she shot me a glance. Stop pretending. These products only exist in modern times. The day you were able to take over the second half of Snow Plum, I knew something was amiss. I never imagined you were so adept at concealing your true nature. I questioned why the plot has progressed so far yet you remain alive. It seems you are also one of those who crossed over. I smiled lightly. Since I had dared to recite poetry in the crown prince's residence, I was unperturbed by her realization. Lowering my gaze, I replied, "There is no benefit in further discussion. You remain the main character, dear sister, while Ling Shuang is merely unwilling to become cannon fodder. Now, as I assist you in entering the crown prince's residence, you may help my business prosper in return. Should the Tan family's enterprise flourish, you shall also gain an ally." Shen Chunning narrowed her eyes. "Is this your plan all along?" I picked up one of the bottles of lotion. Though the Tan family is of lesser standing, they are still imperial merchants. And these products are of exceptional quality meant for internal supply. If you find them appealing, why not take a few to curry favor with someone? Ling Shuang may not know much, but she understands the darkness of the palace. Having more allies will not harm you. Shen Chunning raised an eyebrow. You certainly know how to play your cards right. Very well, seeing as you have been quite honest and have even shielded me from the Tan family's marriage arrangements. I shall not make things difficult for you. I bowed my head. Indeed, as you are destined to become a noble lady, it is only right that the advantageous match with the Tan family is passed on to your younger sister, who will be most grateful. Flattered, Shen Chunning waved her hand. Though the Tan family is insignificant, these items are indeed valuable. Keep them all. I shall attend the tea gathering hosted by Princess Heong tomorrow, and I can take them along. I smiled in response. Thank you, elder sister. Through a series of deceptions, I was fortunate that Shen Chunning harbored no suspicions regarding the pirated book she had read. A few days later, she sought me out once more, expressing her desire to procure additional skincare products from the Tan family to present to the noble ladies. While I secretly reveled in her eagerness, I maintained a facade of reluctance, claiming that the production took time and that I was uncertain of the availability of stock, though I would make inquiries. After letting her stew for a few days, I approached Shen Chunning with news that the Tan family's young master remained infatuated with her and had agreed to open a private shop in the capital, dedicated to selling Jade Fat Spring. If she wished, they could order directly from the store, and I would offer her a 20% discount. The discount was, of course, a jest, as increasing the price by 20% would still yield a profit. Yet, Shen Chunning was easily swayed, for in her narrative, she was the chosen darling, adored by all men. Thereafter, Shen Chunning continued to enjoy my complimentary skincare products, serving as my spokesperson at various banquets, proclaiming that Jade Fat Spring was unique to the capital. While this attracted a fair share of envy, it undeniably elevated the product's reputation. The noble ladies, short on funds, found it difficult to secure these coveted items. In a brief span, Jade Fat Spring had become the talk of the capital. Not only the noble ladies, but even those within the royal palace discreetly dispatched inquiries. I was wary of complacency, promptly expanding my workforce to initiate a customized service. Each month, apart from catering to walk-in customers at the storefront, the high-end products for the daughters of aristocratic families were delivered directly to their residences. Watching the profits multiply in my monthly accounts, my previously anxious heart gradually settled. With wealth comes power. And as long as I could extricate myself from the Shin family before the crown prince's downfall, I would be entirely secure. As my business thrived, I reveled in the gleam of my account books. However, upon returning home adorned with colorful rings, I sensed a heavy atmosphere within the Shun residence. Inquiring revealed that a marriage decree had arrived for Shin Chunning earlier that day. To my surprise, it was merely for a concubine's position. This left Shin Chunning utterly confounded. With no choice but to accept the decree, Shin Chunning, once the visitors departed, erupted in a fit of rage within her chamber, disregarding attempts to restrain her as she attempted to confront the crown prince's residence for an explanation. Ultimately, it was Shun Jijian's cold demeanor that silenced her with a slap. What nonsense is this? The crown princess is the legitimate daughter of the Ningyuan Marquis, a request made by the crown prince himself to the emperor long ago. Shun Chunning gazed at Shin Jijian in disbelief. Father, you knew all along? And what of it? For the past few months, I have allowed you to act recklessly, hoping you would at least secure a position as a concubine. Now that the decree is issued, what discontent do you have? Regardless, you are to become a legitimate lady of the inner palace. If you conduct yourself properly, you might even secure the title of noble consort. Aren't you being ungrateful? Tears welled in Shin Chunning's eyes as she stared wide-eyed. But I am meant to be the crown princess. Father, I am destined to be a paragon of virtue. Seeing her still lost in delusion, Shin Jijian glared at her. The Ningyuan Marquis is a first-ranking noble, commanding an army of 300,000. The emperor bestowed this marriage to keep him in check. How could the imperial throne be granted to an insignificant family of civil officials? Use your brain. Upon hearing this, Shin Chunning staggered back, collapsing onto the ground in despair. She looked vacantly at Shin Jijian, then around at the others, her gaze finally landing on me, her expression turning venomous. It's you, isn't it? I knew it. For so long, the plot has grown increasingly strange. You should have perished by now. How can you still be alive? Where did this Ningyuan Marquis come from? He never existed in the original story. The crown prince should love only me. He knows I fell into the lake. He would have filled the lake for me. He knows you pushed me. He would have thrown you into the lake to fill it as well. He knows I am talented. He would have drunk and sung with me before our wedding. His leg ailment is merely an act. It shouldn't be like this. Witnessing her in such a state, Shin Jijian frowned. What are you rambling about? What does this have to do with your younger sister? I suppressed a cold laugh, lowering my gaze. Elder sister seems to be in distress. Father, you should quickly summon a physician to examine her. In the pirated book read by Shin Chunning, the characters and plot had been altered and expanded upon from the foundation of my narrative, creating a pure palace intrigue romance. In that stolen work, the prince was depicted as adorably foolish, and the palace intrigue was naively simplistic. Indeed, the cannon fodder was cast into the lake to be buried. However, that was piracy. In the original text, the crown prince cannot survive past next year. Shin Chunning sensed the deviation in the plot and, in a frenzy, sought me out for assistance. How could I possibly aid her? She still harbored hopes that her crown prince would cast me into the lake to eliminate me. Shin Jijian, fearing her outbursts, confined her to her chamber and appointed guards to watch over her day and night, forbidding her from stepping outside until her marriage into the crown prince's residence. Shin Chunning banged on the door, her curses audible even from outside the courtyard. Shunling Shuang, you wretched creature. It must be your doing. Let me tell you, I am the protagonist. You are but a supporting character, and you cannot rival me. The crown princess shall be mine. Only mine. Shin Jijian frowned. Were it not for your younger sister marrying the young master of the Tan family in your stead, you wouldn't even have crossed the threshold of the crown prince's residence. Given how often you throw yourself at the crown prince, you might settle for being a side consort. But what more do you desire? Father, it's all a conspiracy. Shunling Shuang's scheme. I was meant to be the crown princess. She framed me. She harmed me. Everyone listened, perplexed, and Shin Jijian, exasperated, waved his sleeve. You all keep a close watch on the legitimate young lady. Without my command, she is not to step outside. I merely dug at my ear and left the courtyard with an air of indifference. Before I could return to my own quarters, Kai Huan rushed back through the back door, and I was taken aback. They found her so quickly? Kai Huan nodded. I send people daily to deliver jade fat spring to her doorstep. Her family matron is quite fond of it, and thus helped me with my request. Saying this, Kai Huan produced a box from her bosom. These 2 jade tokens belong to women missing this year. Since their deaths were not reported, they can still be used. However, I was told to act as soon as possible. For next year, the Ministry of Revenue will conduct a unified investigation into the missing populace, and by then it may be difficult to manage. I picked up the jade token and smiled slightly. Very well, we still have time. As the plot reached this critical juncture, Shen Chunying was reluctantly forced to marry into the Crown Prince's residence as a side consort. Yet less than a month after her marriage, the Crown Prince hosted a grand banquet to wed the daughter of the Ningyuan Marquis, Li Qingxian. After all, it was a coerced union. The lavish bridal procession for Shen Chunying was incomparable to that of Li Qingxian, which was a spectacle of opulence. Were it not for the prior knowledge that the Crown Prince would not survive past next year, one might mistakenly believe that Li Qingxian was the true heroine, given the grandeur of the occasion. The gossip surrounding the Crown Prince became mere entertainment over tea, and with Shen Chunying leaving the Shen family, I was no longer under threat from her. Thus, I promptly accelerated my financial dealings. With my management, the establishment Yuzukin gained increasing prominence, even attracting the attention of the royal merchants. I had never visited the storefront nor revealed myself, so they could not locate me and thus sent the notice directly to the shop. While I was reviewing the recent accounts to calculate profits, Kai Huan handed me the notice. If we can collaborate with the royal merchants, future tax burdens will be alleviated. It is truly a pity that we must withdraw now. After finalizing the last entry, I set down my pen and picked up the notice. Greed can lead to one's downfall. Since the royal merchants wish to negotiate a partnership, we might as well hand over the entire shop to them. Do you mean to sell all the shops to the royals? Given that our business is flourishing, I believe we can negotiate a favorable price. Staying in the capital even a day longer is fraught with danger, now that the royal merchants have taken notice of us. Yang Chen will surely be aware as well. If the royal merchants are interested in Yuzukin, it would be better to sell, including the recipe, for a handsome price, and then flee south with Kai Huan to establish a small business. The following noon, I donned a veil to cover myself completely and then drove directly to the Tiandi building. This establishment is an official wine house, frequented not only by the Crown Prince but also by merchants conducting business in this elegant place. However, merchants come in various tiers, and the invitation specified a meeting at the top-tier room. It was evident that an ordinary person would not be sent. I dared not be negligent, and thus resolved to attend personally. However, as soon as I set foot in the top-tier room, I froze in place. Raising my gaze, I beheld a man seated within, clad in a regal purple robe adorned with dragon motifs, his black hair styled high beneath a golden-laid crown, exuding an aura of unparalleled nobility and presence. What was he doing here? Perhaps I lingered too long in shock, for he slowly lifted his eyes. In just a few months, my second sister has truly impressed me. I turned to flee, but then reconsidered. If I did not sell to the royals, who else would dare take over? Realizing this was for the sake of selling the shop, I steeled myself and entered the private room. As Yang Chen raised his hand, 2 black-clad guards swiftly departed. Yang Chen sipped his tea in silence, while I lowered my head, my toes digging into the ground. After a while, the teacup in front of me was set down. I underestimated you, second sister. I was startled and hastily knelt before him. My humble self trembles. What is there to panic about?
Seat.
Only then did I slowly move to the chair, and Yang Chen began to rub the ring on his finger, gazing out at the distant azure lake. In just half a year, the trinkets circulating among the noble women of the capital have flourished in your hands. How did I not notice that you, a girl from a secluded family, are quite the business prodigy? In the original narrative, the regent had been privately investigating the Crown Prince's dealings to uncover evidence of treason, inadvertently stumbling upon matters related to the protagonist, resulting in a tangled web of intrigue and deceit between the two. However, now that the flames of conflict had reached me, I found myself in a predicament. I knew the protagonist's script, but the supporting character's journey had never extended this far. What if I inadvertently spoke a wrong word and incurred his wrath? Would that not hasten my demise? Each encounter with Yang Chen sent shivers down my spine. After a long pause, I forced a dry laugh. Your Highness is too kind. Eventually, Yang Chen spoke. Come closer. Yes. I repositioned myself forward. Closer. Trembling, I shifted again. Perhaps he was growing impatient as he reached out and grasped my collar, pulling me directly in front of him. Second sister, sit. I dared not refuse. Biting my lip and settling on his lap, pressed against the cold, soft sword at his waist. If I am not mistaken, the gifts the crown prince sent you that day were all returned to recoup expenses, were they not? The proximity of his breath was intoxicating, and I could even catch a faint scent of tea wafting through the veil. My body stiffened, akin to a lifeless hamster. Your Highness truly possesses remarkable insight. The man chuckled softly at my flattery. I am merely curious. How many times has that sum of money multiplied in your hands now? I quickly slid off his lap and knelt on the ground. Your Highness, please see clearly. I only wish to secure a means of survival. Who could have anticipated that in recent months the shop would inexplicably thrive? I fear I lack the capacity to manage such a large business. Thus I have come to discuss the transfer of ownership. You wish to sell the shop? Indeed. Yang Chun bent down, reaching through the veil to lift the thin gauze. Pausing momentarily, as I pinched my thigh, my eyes turned red with emotion. This humble girl does not comprehend why the prince would advocate for the young master of the Tan family. All I know is that if I cannot marry, my father will surely treat me as mere merchandise to be sold again. Thus I must devise a means of escape. I implore the prince to show mercy and accept my shop. Yang Chen narrowed his eyes. You seek my compassion, yet expect me to purchase your shop? My gaze was earnest as I bowed my head in reverence. If the prince could take over the shop entirely, I would certainly repay this kindness in the future. How much do you wish to sell it for? Upon hearing this, my countenance brightened, and I lifted my head. The other shops can be sold for money, but only Yu Ji Chun is a unique treasure. The goods are all essential consumables, crafted from exclusive recipes that cannot be found elsewhere in the world. The monthly profit from the shop hovers around 1,000 taels, and should the business wish to expand into chains across various locations, the revenue would multiply. I require not much, a flat price of 500,000 taels of silver for the shop, including the others. Yang Chun toyed with the ring on his finger, a smile gracing his lips.
Oh.
After listening to your boast, you expect me to part with 500,000 taels? Do you take me for a fool, dear sister? I bowed once more. Your Highness, please see clearly. If Yu Ji Chun were not profitable, you would not have come to meet me under the guise of a merchant. Currently, the demand for Yu Ji Chun's products far exceeds the supply, with a single bottle in the capital already fetching 3 times its original price. Forgive my frankness, but given the turmoil in the northern frontier, if the royal merchant could transport this item abroad, it would surely alleviate the urgent financial strain on the treasury. As I finished speaking, the air became eerily silent. Yang Chan propped his chin on his hand, scrutinizing me, causing a chill to run down my spine. After a lengthy pause, he finally remarked, "Bring forth the contract." Moments later, someone entered with the contract in hand. Yang Chun took a pen, completed the document, and stamped it with the merchant's seal. I exhaled deeply, accepting the contract and glancing over it, only to be taken aback. 500,000 taels of silver, with an advance of 200,000 taels, and the remaining 300,000 to be settled by September. What does the prince mean by this? Yang Chun leaned back, languidly replying, "As you mentioned, the border is in turmoil, and most merchants are supporting the front lines, making it difficult to gather such a sum at once. However, rest assured, by the golden autumn of September, when you ride to the Tan family in a bridal sedan chair, the final payment will be delivered in full." My eyes widened in disbelief. Noticing my apparent dissatisfaction, he continued, "Or do you believe that any other merchant could muster the 500,000 taels to acquire your shop and its recipes?" I gritted my teeth. I would not dare. Yang Chen smiled slightly, then waved his hand grandly, rising to leave. "Fear not, dear sister. As long as you fulfill your obligations, you shall receive every single tael. The advance will be delivered shortly." Watching him depart, I stood still, my heart heavy with contemplation. It became evident that during my wedding journey in September, Yang Chun would undoubtedly make his move. Initially described as bandits blocking the road, it now seemed far more intricate. Was he planning to sacrifice me to avoid the remaining 300,000 taels? Before long, the merchant's representatives arrived with the 200,000 taels in banknotes. A thick stack of notes, which I counted alongside Kai Huan, revealed that beneath the wooden box lay a land deed. Upon unfolding it, I was astonished to find it was for the residence in Kaizhou, for which I had only paid a deposit. A chill ran down my spine as I glanced toward the door. 1 month later, I sat in a carriage laden with luggage, lifting the curtain to gaze upon the approaching convoy of horse-drawn carriages. Initially, I had intended to blend in with Kai Huan and the merchant caravan, but the ongoing conflict in the northern frontier had led to stricter inspections in the capital. Fortunately, Li Chengxian was departing the city to offer prayers. and her lead prompted all noble young ladies with familial ties to government to join her, providing me with an opportunity. Watching Li Chengxian in her solitary carriage, I was reminded of Shen Chunning. Since marrying into the crown prince's residence, Shen Chunning had not returned home even once. I had sensed something amiss and had someone deliver goods under the guise of Yu Zhichun, only to discover Shen Chunning was merely amplifying her own drama. Unsettled in the crown prince's residence, she seemed to believe she could alter her fate, simultaneously pleading for eternal love from the crown prince while scheming against the concubines. Even Li Chengxian was not spared. Their rivalry had escalated to the point of reaching the crown prince, Zhou Xing's ears. For half a year, the conflict in the northern frontier had remained unresolved. Zhou Xing, having proposed sending a princess to seal an alliance, found himself besieged by detractors in the court, inciting the emperor's wrath, who hurled the memorial at Zhou Xing's face, advising him to tread carefully. Zhou Xing, already burdened with frustrations, now faced rumors of instability in the succession, directing his anger toward the inner courtyard. Given Zhou Xing's notoriously violent temperament, no one escaped unscathed. Li Chengxian, with the backing of the marquis's residence, suffered minimal consequences, while Shen Chunning became the scapegoat. Ultimately, she was not only confined but also subjected to a dozen lashes, reportedly requiring months to recover. Now, with Li Qingshuan's public appearance as the crown princess consort to pray for the border, Shen Chunning was not even permitted to accompany her. With enmity toward Li Chengxian and disdain from Zhou Xing, she was likely to be confined indefinitely. As the convoy exited the city gates, I lowered the curtain and instructed the driver to follow. The group journeyed westward, but I directed the driver to veer off the official road and head north instead. Yang Chun was aware of my residence in Kazhou. The land deed served as a warning. It signified that no matter where I fled, he could locate me. Yet, what if I escaped to the northern frontier? With the chaos there, surely his reach could not extend that far. However, just after the main force exited the official road, a multitude of figures clad in black emerged from the woods, brandishing knives as they charged forward. Assassins! Assassins! Protect the crown princess! Chaos erupted all around. As I prepared to lift the curtain for a better view, I witnessed the driver before me have his throat slit. Seeing Li Qingshuan's carriage heavily guarded by palace soldiers, while others were being seized, I leapt from my carriage, drawing a hairpin to stab the horse. With a pained whinny, the horse bolted, and I tightened the reins, steering the carriage away. Amidst the turmoil, our carriage collided with several black-clad assailants, yet a few swiftly mounted riders pursued us. Miss, it's dangerous. Arrows flew from both sides, and before I could react, Kai Huan leapt from the carriage to shield me from an arrow.
Kai Huan.
Miss, I am fine. Keep running. As I beheld the arrow embedded in Kai Huan's body, I gritted my teeth and drove the carriage deeper into the forest. The original narrative had not foreseen such an encounter. It was merely a group of noble ladies embarking on a pilgrimage. Why were assassins present? Kai Huan, hold on. Once we reach the official road, we will return to the capital. We will be safe. Yet Kai Huan clung to me tightly, her eyes wide with fear.
No, miss.
We must run north. We cannot go back. We must not return. Why can't we go back? Kai Huan, please return to the carriage. I will find you the best doctor when we get back. We cannot die. None of us can.
No, no, no.
Kai Huan grasped me, her eyes burning with urgency. You will die, miss, on the way to your marriage. We absolutely cannot go back. A sudden buzzing sensation enveloped my mind. How could she possibly know? When I had never mentioned it, I felt my arm damp with blood, and upon looking down, I discovered that the blood from Tsai Huan's wound had saturated half of my shoulder. Miss, remember, never board the wedding carriage. There will be bandits along the route to the Tan family. Just as the horse was struck by an arrow through its neck, the carriage overturned. Clutching Tsai Huan, I crawled out from the wreckage, only to be met with a volley of arrows from a group of cloaked assailants. I resigned myself to death, but miraculously, an arrow flew through the air and deflected their shots. Before long, a cadre of armed guards charged forth to confront the assailants. Raising my gaze, I was met by a figure clad in a resplendent purple robe that dazzled my eyes. With no time to marvel, I seized the hem of their garment in desperation. Please, save her. Yang Chun, mounted on his horse, looked down at me. Someone, escort the second young lady of the Shen family back to the Wang residence. To my astonishment, upon returning to the Wang residence, Yang Chun summoned the imperial physician without hesitation. Thanks to his timely intervention, Tsai Huan's life was spared. It was revealed that her injury had come perilously close to reaching her heart and lungs, a narrow escape indeed. I remained by Tsaihuan's bedside for several days until she finally stirred, murmuring Mississippi. I pressed her back down gently. Do not rise. Your injuries have yet to heal. You must lie flat and rest. Tsaihuan looked at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. Miss, you are so foolish. You could have walked away by now. I shook my head. Had I just arrived in this world, I might not have cared about Tsaihuan's fate. However, having spent 5 years by her side, I could never stand idly by as she faced death. I patted her hand reassuringly. I promise to treat you to the finest delicacies, and I shall not break my word. Focus on your recovery. We will devise our escape in due time. Tsaihuan pressed her lips together. I understand. Ever since you spoke those words, I knew you were no longer the same Mississippi. She revealed that she had been reborn after sacrificing herself for Xinling Shuang. Upon reopening her eyes, she found herself back in the Xin family, long before I had arrived. She had always sensed that I was not the same person as the previous Xinling Shuang, but she dared not voice it, thinking that if we met again, she would do anything to persuade Xinling Shuang away from the path of marriage. Little did she anticipate that I had no intention of boarding the Tan family's wedding carriage, having instead spent 5 years saving money for our escape. What surprised her even more was my plan to provide her with a shop. Everything I did was evident to Tsaihuan, and she felt assured that this life would be stable, never suspecting the complications that would arise just before our flight. Suddenly, a thought struck Tsaihuan, and she grasped my arm. Miss, why did the assassins appear so suddenly that day? They were all daughters of noble families. And how did our cousin suddenly become a prince? I still had some awareness, then, and heard the guards refer to him as Your Highness. I sighed. Do not inquire further. All I know is that the attack was orchestrated by Shun Chunning in collusion with outside conspirators. Tsaihuan's expression turned to one of disbelief. The legitimate young lady. Her astonishment was understandable. I had felt the same shock upon learning the truth. Shun Chunning was indeed a formidable figure. In her narrative, she had dealings with individuals from the underworld. In my story, it was unclear how she managed to be both imprisoned in the Crown Prince's residence and simultaneously hire a killer organization with a substantial bounty on her life. It was only later, after speaking with Yang Chen, that I learned the truth. The group she had enlisted was not a band of assassins, but rather a faction of spies from the northern frontier infiltrating the capital. The Crown Princess's assassination attempt would undoubtedly cause an uproar, especially given the ongoing turmoil in the northern territories, potentially shaking the populace's confidence. Yet, this turn of events inadvertently aided Yang Chen. The original plot had him overthrowing the Crown Prince by the year's end. Now armed with evidence against Xin Chunning and the spies, Yang Chen approached the emperor, leaving the Crown Prince unable to defend himself. Even the Duke of Ningyuan, upon discovering that his daughter had conspired with the Crown Prince's mistress, was so enraged that he withdrew from court, only for the emperor to imprison the Crown Prince, temporarily alleviating the situation. A thought crossed my mind, and I squinted. Tsaihuan, do you remember the appearance of the bandits on the road to marriage in our past life? Tsaihuan furrowed her brow. Miss, are you suggesting that the bandits from our previous life were actually these northern barbarians in disguise? I pressed my lips together. It is merely a conjecture. Tsaihuan immediately responded. Miss, do we still have that arrow? Perhaps I can identify it. I promptly rose and retrieved the severed arrow from the side. Tsaihuan examined it closely, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. Judging by her reaction, I began to piece together the truth. It seemed that the bandits from our past life were indeed these barbarous marauders masquerading as such, and this plot had been preemptively set in motion by Xin Chunning. In our previous life, the Tan family wedding carriage was merely an opportunistic target to rob and harm Xinling Shuang. Their true aim had never been the wedding itself. The Tan family, being the wealthiest in Jinzhou, was a tempting target, and Yang Chen had long planned to lure these marauders out using the wedding carriage. However, Xin Chunning's meddling had inadvertently drawn them out prematurely. Tsaihuan appeared to grasp the implications, her expression tinged with anxiety. Miss, what shall we do? Will the Tan family's wedding carriage still encounter bandits in the future? Those marauders have been imprisoned, so it is unlikely. I reassured her. Moreover, it seems this marriage may no longer proceed. Indeed, within a few days, the Crown Prince's residence was raided. However, unlike in our past life, the Duke of Ningyuan had yet to mobilize troops north, and Li Chengxian, being a victim, managed to escape the fate of being buried alongside the Crown Prince. Instead, she had obtained a divorce decree, severing ties with him. The emperor had sold a favor to the duke, who finally agreed to march north in October. Throughout this turmoil, I was never returned to the Shin family, as they too faced confiscation. The male members were exiled, while the females were forced into prostitution. It is indeed a lamentable tale. The officials in court had fixated on the crown prince's physical ailments, fearing that his condition might hinder the royal succession. Although the imperial physician had not definitively stated that the crown prince was incapable of fathering children, the issue of succession had planted a thorn in his side long ago. Unwilling to relinquish the throne, the crown prince made a public show of marrying a duke's daughter while secretly conspiring with Xin Zijiang and other court officials, even contemplating an alliance with the northern barbarians to seize power amidst the chaos of war. In our past life, Yang Chen had laid all the evidence of treason before the court, effectively toppling the crown prince. This time, with my presence to facilitate Yang Chen's endeavors between the Shin family and the crown prince's residence, gathering evidence became far more manageable.
With the fall of the Shin family,
Shinling Shuang could not escape the fate of becoming one of the women forced into prostitution. However, as Yang Chen had conveyed, Shinling Shuang had already perished in that assassination attempt on the outskirts. From the day I returned, my name became Ji Qingyao, the missing merchant girl from the missing persons list. This girl had no parents, leaving no trace to verify her existence. Yang Chen had fulfilled his promise ahead of time. In the golden autumn of September, instead of embarking on the road to marriage, I once again took the reins of a carriage alongside Saihuan, departing the city. As I reached the city gates early that morning, Yang Chen's carriage was already waiting halfway down the road. I was beckoned into the carriage, where Yang Chen sat. I have been preoccupied with official matters these days and nearly forgot about you. Now that you are free, what do you wish to do in the capital? Where do you wish to go? I bowed my head respectfully. Your Highness has granted me my freedom. Thus, I shall go wherever my heart desires. Inside the carriage, the air pressure was exceedingly low. After a prolonged silence, Yang Chen sighed. Kuzhou is a commendable place. The land deed has been granted to you, so you should go there. I cast my eyes downward and did not respond. After a while, a jade token was tossed before me, inscribed with the character Jiao. Keep this safe. Should any trouble arise, wear the token. No one will dare obstruct you. I picked up the jade token and bowed my head in gratitude. Thank you, Your Highness. Just as I was about to depart from the carriage, I was called back once more. Yang Chen lifted the carriage curtain, gazing at me with a complex expression. Second sister, the world outside is fraught with peril. Why must you insist on leaving? I raised my head and smiled. Your Highness, you jest. In this world, where is it not perilous? Yang Chen replied nonchalantly, my royal residence is the most tranquil. I looked up and smiled. Your Highness knows well that my aspirations lie not here. Yang Chen regarded me for a lengthy moment before the curtain fell. As the carriage departed, I exhaled in relief and turned back to my own vehicle. Let us depart. With Yang Chen's approval, I journeyed southward once again with Saihuan, making our way directly to Kuzhou, though we did not linger long. We merely conducted a brief exploration before selling the land deed of Kuzhou and proceeding to the vicinity of Xiguan to engage in the business of emergency rations, a venture the original protagonist would later undertake. Outside Xiguan, a multitude of merchants traversed the roads, along with escort agencies and some couriers. The common provisions for travelers were merely dry cakes or steamed buns, but my compressed biscuits, beef chili sauce, instant noodles, and pickled vegetables, foods convenient for travel, immediately attracted a throng of customers upon their introduction. In fact, for the following year, one could observe travelers cooking noodles with chili sauce in small pots along the roads, while children passed by nibbling on fruit-flavored biscuits. Since the Ningyuan Marquis stationed himself in the northern frontier, the situation there had somewhat eased. However, 3 years later, tensions in the northern frontier escalated once more. And it was during this tumultuous time that the emperor suddenly passed away, plunging the court and the realm into chaos. Half a month later, it was relayed by the messenger at the post station that the young fifth prince had been elevated to the throne by Yang Chen, who then assumed the role of regent, managing state affairs on behalf of the young emperor. At that time, I was outside Xiguan, finalizing a long-term supply contract with merchants from the Chu kingdom. My enterprise expanded from Xiguan to the neighboring Chu kingdom and further into the interior, culminating in a chain of stores numbering over 100. The Ji family business I founded employed more than 1,000 individuals, venturing beyond food supplies to include pharmaceuticals, textiles, and even restaurants. Saihuan managed the largest enterprise in Xiguan, thriving in her endeavors. In August of that same year, Saihuan invited a son-in-law, marking a festive day adorned with lanterns and celebration. As I styled her hair, witnessing her donned in a red wedding gown, My heart brimmed with comfort. Through the mirror, Saihuan gazed at me. Miss, must you truly go? Can't you send a reliable shopkeeper in your stead? I sighed. I must traverse all 64 cities. If I do not go personally, I fear those in charge may feign compliance. Saihuan rose and embraced me. Miss, I shall not marry. I will accompany you. I chuckled and patted her. That will not do. Your presence at the main shop in Shiguan allows me to feel at ease. Saihuan, in this life, I trust only you. As the original text indicated, the northern frontier had reached a point of exhaustion and desperation. If I did not take action soon, the northern tribes might breach the borders and advance southward, leading to the downfall of the nation, rendering my amassed wealth utterly futile. Therefore, it was imperative to return to the storyline, embarking immediately towards the 64 cities to gather grain and silver, heading north to provide aid. After bidding farewell to Saihuan, I joined the assembled merchant convoy, traveling tirelessly and, within 3 months, traversed the majority of cities, amassing 800,000 pickles of grain, which I personally escorted northward. The journey north was fraught with challenges. Approaching Hezhou, we encountered local officials and soldiers who intercepted us. Because I could not produce the imperial documents, they sought to confiscate all the grain. The documents were already en route and should have reached Yangchen by now. However, for reasons unknown, there had been no response. The local prefect, aware that we were delivering grain to the northern frontier, had previously allowed us passage, yet here we faced an unexpected setback. Sir, the front line is in dire need of supplies. If the northern pass is breached, do you not realize that Hezhou will also face the wrath of the barbarian invaders? The middle-aged man before me squinted. This is mere alarmism. With an Yuan marquis stationed in the northern frontier, how could the barbarian army breach the gates? Your grain's origins are dubious. If I were to let you pass and they hold me accountable, what will become of my official position? The prefect of Hezhou, named Zhao Ling, had already faced demotion and exile due to matters concerning the crown prince. It was evident that he had not refrained from oppressing the common folk in this desolate place. In despair, I offer him 50 taels of gold. The documents are on their way. I kindly request your leniency. If you are truly concerned, we can wait in the city until the documents arrive. Zhao Ling's eyes lit up at the sight of the gold, and after a moment of contemplation, he stroked his beard and looked at me with a grin. It is not impossible to wait. Guards, seize this group and throw them into prison until the documents arrive. I frowned and, from my bosom, produced the jade token given to me by Yangchen. Sir, I implore you, please show some understanding. The moment the jade token was revealed, the surroundings fell silent. Zhao Ling squinted as he snatched the token, then let out a cold laugh before throwing it to the ground. Presumptuous! You dare to wield a forged jade token in my Hezhou? Guards, apprehend them all. Confiscate all grain and silver. The token shattered, and I stared at Zhao Ling in disbelief. Zhao Ling, are you seeking your own demise? This is a token personally bestowed upon me by the regent. If anything were to happen to us, how many heads would suffice to pay for your folly? Zhao Ling sneered disdainfully. You ignorant commoner, in this desolate place of Hezhou, the regent's influence cannot reach so far. If anyone could simply present a jade token to deceive me, then I might as well resign from my position. Guards, take them away. As the guards moved to detain everyone, I was yanked from the carriage. In the midst of my struggle, an arrow suddenly whistled past my ear, embedding itself in Zhao Ling's official hat. Turning back, I saw a cloud of dust rising in the distance, hinting at the approach of a large contingent. At the forefront, a man clad in silver armor galloped towards us, while those behind him drew their bows, a second arrow piercing Zhao Ling's hairdo. The regent is here. Who dares to act presumptuously? Zhao Ling, having never witnessed such an imposing display, was instantly paralyzed with fear. Why is the regent here? The man, his demeanor stern, rode forth and fixed Zhao Ling with a cold gaze. The Ningyuan marquis has been gravely injured. I lead the troops personally. Do you have any objections? I stood atop the carriage, gazing at the army behind him, my eyes suddenly warm with tears. No wonder there was no response. You were on the road and had not received my message sent to the capital. Yangchen turned to me and then glanced at the grain behind me. Did you bring this? I took a deep breath and raised my hand for someone to present a scroll. This is the 800,000 pickles of grain I collected from the 64 cities. I ask for your review, Your Highness. Inside the carriage, I awkwardly fidgeted with my hands, remaining silent. Yangchen, having removed his helmet, sat beside me, raising an eyebrow. Did you not claim to be obsessed with wealth? How is it that you haven't received the 300,000 taels yet? Why did you leave? I abruptly lifted my head. 300,000 taels? Yang Chen pulled me closer. Indeed, I sent someone to Kuzhou to deliver the silver to you, only to discover that you had sold your courtyard and disappeared for 3 years. Now you return offering me 8 million units of grain? He actually remembered the 300,000 taels. I gazed at Yang Chen, my emotions tangled. After all, distancing myself from the main characters was the only way to survive. I merely wished to be a wealthy commoner, living a grounded life. I chuckled awkwardly and lowered my head. So, will that 300,000 taels be returned later? Yang Chen narrowed his eyes. Shenling Shuang, I truly cannot fathom you. To say you love wealth. Yet this 8 million units of grain would likely drain all that you have accumulated over these 3 years. I hastily waved my hand. Your Highness, there is no need to see through me. Ling Shuang is merely the daughter of a condemned minister and should not have any further entanglements with your Highness. This 8 million units of grain is simply an attempt to offer my humble assistance. Yang Chen released me. If even half of those in the court could exert themselves as you do, the northern frontier would not be in its current state. I hung my head, and after a long silence, I finally spoke. In truth, I too desire something. Upon hearing my words, Yang Chen raised an eyebrow and leaned closer. Oh, then tell me, what do you want? Aside from the 300,000 taels, anything else you ask for, I can grant you. His warm breath brushed against my ear, causing my heart to skip a beat. The atmosphere was charged. I licked my lips and looked up at the man who was merely half an inch away. Well, if I were to propose something, Your Highness, please do not think me too audacious. Yang Chen's gaze lingered on my lips as a smile curved his mouth. Only if you dare to speak. I bit my lip, blushing as I said, Your Highness, I have a trading company. I wish to follow in the footsteps of the Tan family and one day partake in the imperial provisions. Upon finishing, the man paused. After a moment, Yang Chen clenched his jaw, staring at me, and then I smiled brightly at him. That's all. Suddenly, I felt a tightness at my collar and my breath hitched. I widened my eyes, my breathing growing rapid. After what felt like an eternity, the man's lips grazed my ear. Do you know? I genuinely intended to marry you back then, for you are remarkably clever and know your limits. You deliberately exposed your vulnerabilities to me, appeared to yield, and then took your leave while I was off guard. He continued, that day when the crown princess was attacked, and I saw your carriage filled with your belongings for escape, I realized you had long wished to flee. Originally, I thought that since the matter was settled, you would not depart, yet you vanished, retreating to a place I could not find. His breath grew heavier against my ear, and I hastily pushed him away, lifting my gaze to find no trace of mirth left in my eyes. Your Highness, you are merely unwilling to accept this. I am but the daughter of a lowly, condemned minister, unworthy of your concern. You only feel this way because I was the first not to be swayed by your wealth or status, even with your insinuations of your harem. But, Your Highness, I have already made my desires known to you. It was never a game of feigned capture. Yang Chen grasped my chin. Yes, you did say you craved freedom. But how do you know that I cannot offer you that freedom? I smiled lightly, bowing respectfully. It is enough. Today, I have been too forward. You may pretend not to have heard my business proposal. Now that the provisions have been delivered, and with your army's escort, my duty is fulfilled. I shall take my leave. As I attempted to rise, Yang Chen's long arm pulled me back into his embrace.
Gusped insop, Yang Chen.
What are you doing? Yang Chen looked at me, a smile dancing at the corners of his lips. I knew your meekness was merely an act. You dare to call my name, demonstrating quite the audacity. I inhaled sharply, hastily lowering my gaze. I dare not. Observing the panic in my eyes, Yang Chen remarked, What are you afraid of? Did you not wish to partake in the imperial provisions? Once I return victorious, I shall ensure you receive them. My eyes brightened. Really? Yang Chen, seeing my joy, let out a resigned sigh and then picked up a nearby helmet. Heading towards the exit, my word is my bond. However, since my army will directly enter the borders, you must lead a contingent to deliver the provisions to the military camp in Rongqing. Rest assured, I will assign you 500 horsemen for protection along the way. Once you arrive there, you may choose to leave at your convenience. I exhaled in relief. Then I thank your Highness. The battle in the northern frontier was fraught with peril, yet fortunately, the supply of provisions was ample. The barbarian forces had suffered significant losses under the strategic maneuvers of Marquis Ning Yuan and ultimately exhausted their resources outside the pass in less than 3 months, culminating in their defeat at the hands of Yang Chen. The victory in the northern frontier was celebrated nationwide, and I was personally brought back to the capital by Yang Chen. Upon our return to the capital to receive accolades, the Ji family's trading company was recognized for its contributions to the northern frontier battle, thus gaining access to imperial provisions. Because of this connection, within half a year, the shops that had previously been drained of resources due to the collection of provisions were revitalized one by one. As for the 300,000 taels that Yang Chen owed me, they were entirely forgiven. He returned Yuji Chun to me, allowing me to continue its management, even granting a franchise at the Western Gate as national goods directly to neighboring countries, yielding substantial profits. In exchange, the headquarters of the Ji Trading Company was relocated back to the capital, and the Kai family was also brought back. As the emperor aged, Yang Chun gradually delegated some governmental duties to her. In his leisure, he became a frequent visitor to my trading company. While I busied myself with auditing accounts in my study, he would sit opposite me, reviewing memorials. No matter how I tried to shoo him away, he would not budge. If pressed, he would claim to be checking on how well I was faring with the imperial provisions. He simply remained seated across from me, refusing to leave. Eventually, when I fell ill, spending a month working in my own study, he directly entered my home, sending a multitude of tonics while watching me drink them, all the while continuing to review memorials across from me. Unable to endure it any longer, I returned to the trading company to work. After finishing the accounts, he insisted on accompanying me to inspect the shops, claiming it was a discreet inspection. He was like an unshakable burden, but fortunately, aside from that, he did not engage in any other indiscreet activities. In fact, when it came to issues regarding the trading company, I could communicate directly with him, which saved me quite a bit of trouble. A year later, observing that the trading company was gradually stabilizing, I entrusted all business dealings to Kai Huan. Kai Huan had transformed from a frail young girl into a plump matron. Her once delicate hands now adorned the jade bracelet she once dared not touch, and her face bore 2 dimples whenever she smiled, radiating a prosperous aura. Yet, regardless of the company she kept, she still insisted on calling me Miss, a habit she could not shake. As September approached, she saw me packing a carriage in the middle of the night and exclaimed in surprise, "Miss, where are you off to this time?" I waved my hand dismissively. I heard there is a hot spring mountain in Jinbei. I thought I might explore the possibility of developing a guest house there. Kai Huan glanced around, speaking in a hushed tone. "Does the prince know?" I looked at her in confusion. Why should he know? Kai Huan hesitated to respond, but I paid it no mind. The following day, before dawn had graced the world, I set forth from the city, accompanied by a few guards. Along the way, fatigue overcame me, and I succumbed to a brief slumber until the sun ascended high in the sky. As I stirred, I inadvertently turned and found myself brushing against a pair of hands. Startled, I jolted awake, my senses sharpened. Raising my gaze, I was taken aback to discover an unexpected presence within the carriage. A man clad in white, his dark hair elegantly swept upwards, leaned against the window, gazing serenely at the landscape beyond, exuding an unearthly grace. I was momentarily speechless. "Yang Zhen, what brings you here? Haven't you any edicts to review? Aren't you due at court?" Upon noticing my awakening, Yang Zhen turned his head. The emperor must learn to stand on his own. Relying on me incessantly is hardly fitting. Pardon? Is this the sort of rhetoric one would expect from a regent wielding such power? I rubbed my nose awkwardly. A few years prior, when you were so intent on toppling the crown prince, I assumed your ambitions lay firmly within the realm of power. Yang Zhen chukletliktli. If you had witnessed the suffering of the common folk, you too would desire the crown prince's downfall. The emperor possesses a gentle disposition, unlike Zhou Sheng, whose temperament is tyrannical. Should the realm fall into Zhou Sheng's hands, it would not be long before we faced ruin. I swallowed hard, instinctively retreating. "Then why do you follow me? Don't you have your own pursuits?" He regarded me, his eyes alight with mirth. "Indeed, I have had aspirations for several years now." I blinked in disbelief. "Then pursue them. What need have you to accompany me?" Noticing my retreat into the corner, Yang Zhen ceased to tug at me and instead drew closer. Years ago, I found myself pondering what freedom truly meant to my second sister. What destination did you envision in your elaborate schemes to attain the life you desire? He reached out, grasping my hand. "Thus, I have chosen to accompany you. Curious to see where this time you intend to flee." I stared at him, bewildered. "You jest. You would follow me on my travels across the nation?" Yang Zhen met my gaze, his dark eyes reflecting my own. "And what of it? Do I appear to be jesting?" A gust of September wind suddenly swept into the carriage, tousling the strands of hair that fell across Yang Zhen's forehead. I gazed at him, then turned my attention to the autumn leaves fluttering outside the carriage. Although it was indeed September, this was no longer the flower-laden bridal sedan of the Tan family. The story concludes here. Thank you for listening. We shall meet again in the next tale.